What's up, guys? Before we get started, head over to getcominghome.com. The new single just dropped. Shout out to Phil Labonte, singer of All That Remains, guest vocals on the song. The song is about coming home to find your home, your city, the things you once knew and loved in disrepair, decay, homelessness, poverty, etc. Because the people that you entrusted to look after what you cared about dropped the ball. And to those who make the greatest sacrifice and who serve, this one is it's for you. And so we really do appreciate everybody's support so far. Getcominghome.com. We're going to talk about what's the state of this country. And, my question was, there's this viral video from A Bronx Tale, which I'm sure, Michael, you've seen that movie, right?
Many times, yeah.
And there's this great scene where, the main guy beats the crap out of some bikers. And it got me thinking about when I see these videos of these roaming bands just smashing department stores, taking whatever they want. I'm like, I don't think that would have happened if the neighborhoods were still run by the mafia. So, Michael, do you want to introduce yourself and just give your background?
Sure. Michael Franzese, and I think most people know that at one point in time I was a cop regime, a member of the Colombo crime family back in New York. My dad was the underboss of that family for many, many years, and I was part of that life for about 20 years, 20 plus years. And did pretty well, became a major target of law enforcement, was arrested probably 18, 19 times, indicted 7 times, went to trial 5 times. I actually did 10 years, got a 10-year prison sentence, did 8 years in prison. And then my life kind of turned around. I met a young girl who's now my wife of 39 years. Oh. And walked away from that life and, been living a little bit differently for the past 20 some odd years. So,
man, I got 1,000,001 questions. We'll get to it. Shane's hanging out.
So many questions. I'm very happy to be here. Looking forward to this episode. Shane Cashman, host of Inverted World Live, and let's get to it.
So I obviously want to ask you, the story of how it all begins, but just right off the bat, what I was saying, do you think, is it romanticizing this idea that when the mafia is in charge, there's some order, or is it, you call it a crime family? I watch these videos of roving bands in Chicago, ramming cars into department stores, running and taking whatever they wanted. And I kind of feel like when you see these old stories about when the mafia was much stronger 100 years ago, or when you've got strong organized crime, that kind of stuff doesn't happen. But maybe it does in other ways. I don't know. What do you think?
You know what, Tim? First of all, I slipped, when I say crime family, even though obviously we were involved in criminal activity. But, I hear so many people say crime family. We normally just call it the family, but I guess I've been programmed lately. But, one thing I have to tell you, there was no crime in our neighborhood. Nobody would ever get away with doing anything like that. Never. We took care of our communities. We took care of our neighborhoods. People loved us. I mean, look, if you see clips of John Gotti now, the people in the neighborhood loved him because he took care of the neighborhood. And all of us did the same thing. So that would never happen. There would never be rampant crime like that anywhere, where we were.
It's better.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I'm sorry. The way I think about it is the family, mafia, whatever people want to refer to it as, because I'm sure people use different names for different organizations, whatever it may be. I mean, they know outright if you piss off your neighborhood's going to turn on you, and they're going to work with other people to bring you down. But more importantly, it's your neighbors. It's what you're doing to improve your lives, improves the lives of the people around you. And I feel like what we see now with the crime in all these cities is just social disorder, no connections whatsoever. And so the story I always love to bring up is that that scene from A Bronx Tale where the mob boss hears the ruckus, motorcycles. He walks over and he sees the bikers and they're in the bar and he's like, hey, what's the problem? And the bartender says, these guys aren't dressed appropriately for the bar. Biker turns around and he's like, look, man, we just want to have one beer and then we'll go. And he says, spoken like a gentleman, give the man a beer. And I respect that tremendously, that these guys don't fit in. They're not from the neighborhood. They're being noisy, but he was nice. He says, okay, we're going to get you a beer. Then the biker shakes the beer up. They all spray the bartender down. Mob boss says, okay. He's like, now you got to leave. And then the guy turns around and says, F you. Mm-hmm. Turns around, they start laughing. He walks over, pulls the door closed, locks it, and says, now you just can't leave. And then the boys come in the back with guns and baseball bats and crowbars and beat the crap out of those guys. I'm not going to, in the real world, I'm not a big fan of going around and just getting into bar fights or anything like that. But the idea of the mob boss, he was being nice. Mm-hmm. These guys weren't wearing suits. They weren't wearing collared shirts. But he was nice to them. and then they disrespected him, and then this is what you get. And so that idea in my mind, I'm thinking, were we not better off when you get a chance to be a gentleman and they treat you with respect and you can live your life?
Well, let me tell you, Chaz Palminteri is a very dear friend of mine, and I've seen that movie so many times. There's so many iconic little, points of wisdom that Chaz put in that. And he wasn't part of the life, but he knew the life well. He had a lot of, relationships there. But that's exactly how it would have been handled. It's all about respect. All right, we'll show you respect, just don't cross the line. And when they did, they paid the price for it. But, again, it's about respect. In the neighborhood, you respect your neighborhood. You respect the people around you. You respect your family. And, we've lost that. People say to me all the time, Michael, you guys must have hated the police. And, what do you think about this defunding the police? I said, that's the most ridiculous idea that I've ever heard. I said, you got to have law and order. We didn't disrespect the police. What we used to tell the FBI and the cops, listen, we understand you're on one side, we're on the other. We get it. You have a job to do. Fine. Do your job. If you do your job better than we do ours and we go down, we go down. Just don't frame us and don't harass our family. That's what we would tell them. But if you get us fair and square, no problem. We were never disrespectful to them in that
Did they try that often, framing?
Well, listen, my dad was framed on a case. He got a 50-year sentence, did 40 on the 50, and I'll take it to my grave that my dad was innocent in that case. I investigated it thoroughly. So, yeah, does it happen? Absolutely. Today I can't even believe how, wide open it is. They don't even care anymore. Back then they used to hide it a little bit, but now it's gotten out of hand. But it is what it is.
When do you think that change happened, when it stopped being hidden and they became so blatant with it in terms of the government and police?
For me, it seems like it happened in the last, 7, 8, 9 years. Yeah. I mean, I don't recall being at this out in the open.
Right.
And it's, listen, for me, the most frightening thing you can have in government are two things. Number one, when the party in power starts to weaponize the Department of Justice and their other agencies to go after their political enemies, problem, really problem. And I think we're seeing that. And secondly, when you have the media that's supposed to be non-biased and impartial start covering for that, same party. Yeah. And I think we're seeing that now both ways. And to me, it's very dangerous, very dangerous.
Let me ask you about the family, right? You said, initially you said, people refer to it as the crime family. You said maybe you were programmed. It's called the family. What is the average day-to-day for the family? What do they do?
Well, it all depends on who you were in that life. I would separate the guys in that life, the made guys that actually took the oath. There's two categories. You had the racketeers and you had the gangsters. Now, the racketeers, normally, they were the guys that brought the money in. They knew how to use that life to benefit them in business, and they were earning money. In our family, Colombo family at that time, we had 115 made guys that actually took the oath. Out of that 115, maybe 20 of us were earners, the racketeers. The other guys, they were the gangsters. They did a lot of the heavy work. And they just didn't have the ability to earn. So maybe they had a no-show job. Maybe they're doing a little gambling, little numbers, whatever they could do to grind out a living. But the gangsters couldn't really be the racketeers because they didn't know how. But the racketeers had to be a gangster also because you're going to get called upon to do certain things. So, it all depends on what your level was in that life.
What's heavy work?
Well, listen, I get asked this question all the time, and, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And look, people got killed in that life. There's no question about it. You cross the line, you suffer the consequences. So it could have been that. Do you send people out to beat people up? Not really, but it happens. Sometimes guys get crazy and they do things they shouldn't be doing. But, look, and I want to set the record straight. When we take the oath, we're told that there are certain things that we can't do. You never, ever mess around with another made guy's wife, daughter, sister, mother. That's death. That could be very, very serious. You don't betray the family, obviously. You don't become an informant, obviously. You got to be honest in business. If you're caught stealing and you shouldn't be, you could suffer serious consequences. But the thing is, we all understand that going in. And you're told straight out, you violate the life, and you could pay for it, and it might be your best friend that's called upon to do it because the life comes first. So it's just the way it is.
What would you say is the primary purpose of the family? I mean, was it just you were in this together to work together to better each other's lives, or was there a stated goal of we're going to racket, we're going to be gangsters?
Well, listen, we wanted to make money. At the end of the day, it's about money. You know, we had a lot of power and influence. I always say the golden years of Cosa Nostra, Mafia in this country, really from the late 40s, early 50s, right through to the mid 80s. That's when we had a lot of power and control. We had a lot of control over the unions. We had influence right into the White House. I mean, there's no question about it. We had a lot of power. Not the same now. But, you know, what was the idea? Make money, have influence, and live a good life. That was it. And we would cross the line if we had to.
It's also worth noting that a lot of people who came over and started the families were leaving Italy because of Mussolini.
Absolutely.
Right? So in a way, they were escaping fascism. Mussolini did not like the mobsters in Italy.
He did not. No, Mussolini was upset because he was slighted. He went into Sicily, thought he was going to get a hero's welcome, and the mob guys just ignored him.
Right.
He never forgot
Didn't
it.
they steal his hat or something?
Yeah. They didn't like him. So he never forgot it, and he declared war on the Mafia.
Right.
And that's when they started coming over here.
Right.
So, racketeering, gangsters. What is the racketeering? What did that look like for the family?
The RICO statute was devastating to the families, no question about it. You know, a lot of people like to say it was John Gotti that took the family down because he was flamboyant and he was out there and all of that. John did not take the family down. There were other guys like him. Joe Colombo was a flamboyant guy. There was a lot of guys that maybe not as, you know, outspoken as him, but he didn't bring the family down. It was the racketeering law. You know, I believe till today the law is unconstitutional, but it's there to stay. And they used it very effectively against our families. And it was very hard to defend. And, you know, it took away double jeopardy. There was no double jeopardy before. There was no federal murder before racketeering, but under the RICO statute, murder became a predicate act and people can go down for murder. So it was very devastating.
But what was the racket? What was the family doing?
Well, first of all, you had to be part of a criminal enterprise, and you had to do certain acts in a pattern of racketeering. But you had to first prove that you were part of a criminal enterprise, which wasn't too difficult, you know. And then anything, it could be murder, it could be extortion, it could be the numbers, but it could be anything. It could be a predicate act of the racketeering statute.
So, but I just mean, what was making money? You know, in the majority for the family, like what was it? Gambling? Was it casinos?
Gambling was big. Obviously, it was always a mainstay of that life. You know, union labor racketeering was big. We controlled the unions. You control the unions in this country. Back then, you controlled the country in a big way. You know, politically, what do politicians want? They want money and they want votes. Well, you control the Teamsters. You got 2.5 million people, you know, plus their families. So you got a couple of million people. That's a couple of million votes. And then we had huge pension funds so we can support and donate these the politicians. So we didn't have to chase them. They warmed up to us.
I'm just trying to figure out why the government went after the mafia. Was it really bad stuff? Was it drugs? Were innocent people dying?
Taxes.
Was it taxes?
And let me tell you why I believe it until today. We weren't big drug dealers. We were told straight out if we dealt with drugs, during my era, if we dealt with drugs, we'd die. And I know guys that got killed because they were dealing with drugs. We were not the big drug dealers.
But you mean like the family would say it's a violation for doing or selling drugs?
Yeah,
Wow.
Drugs were off limits. I mean, John Gotti, the reason he was in trouble with Castellano was because his crew was dealing drugs. And so Castellano was going after him for that. But so we weren't big drug. We weren't even in the same league as the cartels. So you can't put us in that league. But, you know, why did they come after us? Because we made headlines for them. That was it. Yeah. And you know what? We didn't shoot back at them. We had a code. You don't go after, you know, in Italy, they went after everybody. Judges, politicians, cops, everything. In America, that was hands off. So we were easy. You come after us, you know, you want to lock us up. We put our hands up, put the handcuffs on, we get in the car and we go and we fight you in court. But we made the big headlines. And so it was very, you know, it was career building to come after us. Were we the worst guys in town? Absolutely not. And I'll say that, and, you know, people may say, oh, come on, Michael, you know, you're putting a good face on the mafia. Well, in some ways I am, yeah.
Look, I got to learn a lot, and I'm sure if we had a prosecutor here who worked in these cases, he's going to say all these really evil and awful things. I just can't get over watching videos of people ransacking businesses. And then I hear these stories about, the protection racket, right? Mobster walks in, two guys show up. They say, you're going to pay us for protection or else. And it always came off when I was a kid that it was a trick. You weren't really getting protection. It was protection from the guys who were coming in.
Exactly.
Yeah, but now I look at things and I'm like, if a couple of mobsters came into your place and said, you're going to pay us protection money or else, and they paid it, and then a day later, a roving band of youths started smashing everything up, the mob is going to come in and actually protect who's paying the bills.
100%.
Otherwise, they ain't getting the bills paid.
100%. It would have stopped immediately.
I kind of want that back.
And let me ask you this, Tim. Why isn't the FBI going after these Venezuelan groups right now?
Yeah, exactly.
They don't make headlines. There's nothing colorful about it. There's nothing big.
They're denying that it's happening.
Exactly. And they could destroy them the same way they destroyed us if they wanted to. If they put the resources against them the way they did with us, they'd clean it up immediately. They don't want to do it.
I think we're still under mob rule. They just don't have an oath to anything other than themselves and their own greed and power and lust for destruction.
I wrote a book, Mafia Democracy, and because I see exactly what they're doing. It's all about money and power and staying in power. That's it. They don't want to give it up.
Maybe you could break down how Pelosi is a mob-type figure for us.
Well, listen, Pelosi's father was mobbed up in Boston, no question about it, 100%. There's no, the evidence is strong there. That's how he stayed in office, became the mayor, the whole bit. I mean, it was his connections. So Pelosi was around Nancy at that time, and she learned from that. She grew up in it. She lived that part of it. And you can see it in her mannerisms and the way she acts. And look, Nancy Pelosi has made hundreds of millions of dollars by insider trading. Something that you or I, we go to jail for, and everybody else. She squashed bills that Congress tried to put forth to stop insider trading among Congress and the family. She's the one that squashed it because she made hundreds of millions of dollars. She made her husband wealthy, and of course, in 2020 or 2022, their trades beat the S&P by 15%, making them the most brilliant traders, stock traders in the country, maybe in the world.
Wow.
Now, is that luck? Yeah, of course not.
I doubt it.
They got one trick they do too. So a lot of people think they've got insider access, classified information. They know it's coming, so they make those trades. They do something else. They will introduce a bill that they know will fail.
Exactly.
But it'll go in the press. New bill to ban this product. And they've already put the shorts on it. The bill hits the news. Stock tanks. They get their gains from the shorts. Then they say, bill was killed.
Yep.
Prices go back up.
Yeah, Michael's got a great example in your book in Mafia Democracy about how all these politicians were saying in the news it's going to be fine during COVID and lockdowns. Meanwhile, they're doing insider trading,
100%.
Making all this money because they see what's coming down the pike.
100%. You know what gets me? You take a Pelosi. The woman is 80-something years old. She's made hundreds of millions of dollars. Don't you want to go home and be with your husband and your kids and your grandkids? No. She wants to stay in power until she's gone, until it's over for her. Right. They can't give it up.
I mean, that's so many of them. I mean, all these people.
Joe Biden. Absolutely. I mean, you remember Feinstein? They had to put her in a wheelchair. She wouldn't give it up, But
was it like that in the family? Did you have people who are really old and just didn't want to back down?
No. When guys knew the time was up, they left.
Costello retired, right?
Costello retired
after almost getting shot, which through the kind of like a Trump situation, right? It was great. Absolutely. He raised his head, and
he was blessed big time because he was coming out of an elevator,
right?
Point blank.
It's crazy.
And he went down, so Chin thought he was dead,
right?
But he survived.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny that the stories are always just so negative. Oh, the mafia these days were so bad, and now we're talking about how awful the current government is and how corrupt and evil and busted the DOJ is. And it's like, man, can we go back to when it was bad? Because this is really
the
bad.
old mafia to take care of the new mafia. And return the RICO charges against the politicians. How can we make that happen?
let me take, because this is a pet peeve of mine. Joe Biden, probably the worst president ever, certainly in my lifetime, no question about it. But I will tell you this. The information that they have against him with respect to his influence peddling as vice president through his son and his brother, between the suspicious bank accounts, the $27 million plus that went into 18 or 21 shell companies. These shell companies did nothing, okay, but exist to collect money. There was no brick and mortar. They had no service, nothing. They did nothing. How do I know this? I had 18 shell companies when I was defrauding the government out of tax on every gallon of gasoline. All we did was use those companies to set up a bank account to collect the money. They did nothing else. They had that. They have all that information on the laptop that they said was false, and then they used it as evidence against his son in trial. The same Justice Department that said it was phony at one time used it to prosecute his son. They've got whistleblowers. They've got text messages. They got emails. This is a racketeering indictment, 1,000%. I know that statute. Now, whether he's innocent or guilty, prove it at trial, but he should have been indicted 100%. And I believe until this moment that Hunter Biden took a plea because all this stuff would have came out at that trial and it would have buried Joe Biden.
Wow.
So he takes a plea. Joe Biden is a pathological liar. He's going to either commute his sentence or he's going to pardon him. There's no doubt about it. That's the fix. It's in already. And these people get away with this stuff. He's treasonous. He sold out America.
Do you think Biden's always been that way?
Yes.
'Cause he's always been like a
100%.
plagiarist liar, right?
He's pathological. The guy makes up stories out of it. There's something mentally wrong with him.
Yeah.
That was
I agree.
his 80s presidential campaign, where what did he do? He plagiarized an Irish politician's speech.
Yeah, I mean, there's many times he plagiarized
He's been
other
doing
people's
it his
speeches.
whole career.
Yeah, it's wild.
His whole career. And look, who sums it up? Barack Obama. Never underestimate Joe's ability to F things up. He said it. He said it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it must be wild. Like, it's funny that this all comes back to politics, but it sounds to me like the real issue may be a loss of competition between crime families. That when you've got the mobsters at their height of their power and the government, it's effectively two mobs going at each other, playing this game, cat and mouse. Now there's just one unchecked, can do whatever it wants.
Yeah.
And it, you know, when I look at these people, I describe them as, we're on the Titanic, we hit the iceberg. They saw it happen, and instead of announcing it to the ship, they're running around taking as many valuables as they can and rushing for the lifeboats.
Yeah.
So all this crime running rampant through our cities, the human waste, the homelessness, the poverty, everything that's causing this decay, and they say it's not happening. Everybody shut your eyes, go back to bed. Meanwhile, those of us who are paying attention, we're watching Joe Biden run off with the silverware, and they're telling us, nah, it's fine, nothing's going on. And no one's going to stop him either because the DOJ, it works for him. He's not the boss, but he's one of them. So that's just it. We sit back and we watch them do all these things. I don't know. I don't know where we go from there, huh?
And you know, Tim, I have to say this. You know, people sometimes, you're getting into too many political issues. This is not politics. When you have people coming over the border that are swarming into your neighborhood and creating havoc and crime on taxpayer dollars, okay, when you have inflation the way it is, when you have all of this stuff going on, these are issues that are affecting our life. Unfortunately, it's politics that control these issues. But I try to make people aware of the issues, and you can't let this happen again for another 4 years. You know, I say this too. You can't trust these people. They've lied to us about Biden. They lie to us continuously every single day. They don't even care. They lie on video. It doesn't even matter anymore. If you have a friend or a companion, a partner, he lies to you once, all right, stuff happens. Second time, you start to get a little unnerved about it. Third, fourth, fifth time, hey, I'm done. It's over. So when these people are lying to you consistently, how could you trust them for another 3 or 4 years after the destruction that they've caused and the dishonesty that they bring forward? And, that's my whole thing. I do not think, I know we're getting into politics here, I don't think America is going to survive another 4 years of this administration.
I think we all agree.
I agree.
Yeah.
How do you think the mafia or the families that you knew from the 70s, 80s would have dealt with the collapsing border crisis now? Because fentanyl's coming over, and well, you said your family wasn't dealing with drugs, but others were. Would they have used that and be happy about the border failing because they could get access to the drugs easier?
No.
But then it would be hurting their neighborhoods, right?
We wouldn't have any crime in our neighborhood. Absolutely not. If we had to shoot people, we would have done it.
Right.
Nobody's going to come into our neighborhood and cry. Look, I grew up, we never locked our doors. We never shut our windows. If my sisters would come home 12, 1 o'clock at night, if they were walking alone, guys would walk aside them and bring them home, There was no crime in our neighborhoods, and we would not allow it. And if we had to go to war with those committing it, they'd know that, here's the border, don't come here.
Right.
Look, what's going on today is just, I never thought I'd ever witness this in my lifetime. I mean it. And they made us to be demons and devils. And listen, I go out to Vegas. People say, Michael, can you guys come back and run this town for us again? I'm not kidding. And it was so much better when we ran it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I watched Casino, and I love Vegas. It's not. I'm not going to go there. I go there. I think I've been there like 3 times in the past decade or whatever. But watching that movie, they sure do make you love what Vegas used to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so. I started going there in the late 70s.
Don't cheat.
It was so wide open. It was just great.
When they bring the guys in the back who are cheating, and they deal with it, you know, I'm not going to pretend like these are good things, but there's something about where we are today with a lack of any kind of accountability or justice for criminals, where you watch a movie like that and you're like, the cheaters got caught, they messed them up a little bit and threw them out and said, don't come back or else. And it's like, you know, it's sad to say, because again, I'm not saying that we should have a system like that, but some accountability, it feels like, would be better than what's going on now. And that's kind of terrifying. You watch these videos of these people going, there was during the riots, small family shop gets ransacked by just a roving band, and no accountability, no arrest, nothing happens. You hear these stories now in Jersey, for instance. When I lived there, someone tried to break in. The cops told me, a lawyer told me this: if you defended yourself with a firearm, you'd be in prison. Someone can break into your house with the intent to kill you, and you can't do anything to protect yourself. And then you look back at these old movies, which I'm sure kind of gloss over the nastier elements, sure. But at least the idea of your neighborhood's going to be safe, you can leave your door unlocked, and you know, as long as you're not being disrespectful or causing problems, then you were good. It's kind of terrifying to say it again. That's better than what we're seeing now in these cities. I go to DC. I see tents everywhere. I see homeless people. I see drug addiction. I went to California. Some morbidly obese homeless woman pulled her pants off in the middle of the street and just started relieving herself in front of everybody. Nobody does anything about it. San Francisco's got the poop department. Not a joke. It's a poo department that goes around to clean up the human waste all over the streets. And then you're like, was the mafia really that bad?
It's like the government made the mafia to be like these demonic figures, as you were saying, just to become it, right? Like, you know, you think in the 50s they had those hearings with Costello and stuff, and they're getting headlines then saying these are this dark, you know, these dark figures lurking in the shadows, but then they become that, and they let everything collapse around them.
Let me ask you real quick: is New York City a good example of where there was strong, you know, mafia presence? Obviously,
It was the strongest presence in this country.
Was there a fear among the people living in these areas that they could be shot randomly? You walking down the street,
Absolutely.
gangster
not.
might just shoot you for no reason.
Not at all.
That's Chicago today. That's Chicago when I was growing up. We get off the store. I got a couple stories, but one is me and my brother were driving on 290. For those that don't know, it's east to west. It goes into the city, and we were exiting at Independence to go to the north side. Car driving past for no reason aims a gun and just shoots at our car, and we're just like, why? Why did that happen? And fights would break out. People would have guns, and so, you know, you say would never happen. I'm curious. Were there ever any instances? I mean, was the mafia roughing up innocent people and causing problems for innocent people, or were they left out of it as long as it's like they're taking care of their business with other groups or what?
Tim, I honestly can say that I only know of the 20 years that I spent in that life. I only know personally of one time when an innocent person got shot. It was an accident and got shot. No, I mean, we roughed up our own. That's it. You know, and people, we heard the expression, we only killed our own. Well, to a great degree, that's true. We didn't go after shooting people in stores and doing all that. And you know what? And that stuff did happen in the 20s and the 30s. That was kind of the Wild West before there really was an organization. The days of Al Capone, there were a bunch of gangs around. It wasn't really organized.
Chicago.
Yeah, until Luciano organized everything. But, you know, what's happening in Chicago now? Oh, my God. And listen, this happened during Obama's administration, Trump, and now Biden. And I don't know why they're not cleaning it up. They can. Trust me when I tell you, they can.
It has to be.
It's on purpose.
Yeah, they can clean it up. The same way they came after us, they can go after them. No question about it.
This Tren de Aragua stuff is pretty crazy.
Oh, God.
Yeah, you got the stories out of Colorado where they take over the apartment complex. The media says it's not happening. You're lying. And then I'm seeing these progressives be like, wait a minute, I Google searched this. Here's a story from a year ago talking about it. Why are they denying it now? It's almost like they want these criminal gangs to come and start taking over.
You have to say that they do. Why would they allow it to happen?
How can they maintain power much longer if they've got everyone living under fear constantly?
Maybe that's how.
But if at some point, maybe not, these people are going to realize it's because of these people. Yeah.
You defend yourself, you go to prison.
Yep.
These gangs run around. This is like what Solzhenitsyn was saying.
Yeah.
That, there was the famous passage in the Gulag Archipelago where Red Soldier is in a fight. Guy pulls out a knife. They're fighting. He takes the knife and he stabs the guy.
Yep.
Gets arrested. And they said, why did you kill him? He was trying to kill me. And they said, why didn't you run away?
Yeah.
Well, a guy's trying to kill you. I mean, there's no excuse. I mean, a reasonable person knows that you can try to run, but you might not be able to. And this person might take your life. You got to defend yourself. And the way they treat it is nope. And so now we're dealing with, I love this. The FBI crime report comes out and they say crime is down. And what they're actually saying is reported crime is down because majority of the large city police agencies have stopped sending us their data.
Right.
We've redefined crime.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the news tells everybody it's down.
It's the dishonesty and the hypocrisy that's just so hard to take.
I feel like the cities are going to have a breaking point, though, where people are going to realize we have to change the way we vote. Perhaps. Like, I don't know what's going on with Eric Adams yet, but it seemed like he was upset about immigration, the way it was hurting his city. And the second he starts to say things that they don't like, the people on his side don't like, all of a sudden everything's happening to him.
All of a sudden he's indicted. All of a sudden they investigate stuff that happened many, many years ago.
Right.
They bring it up on him because he said, rightfully so, why are we paying for this? You're allowing it to happen at the border. Why isn't the federal government paying for it? And they didn't want to.
Right.
He went to the White House a couple of times. I said, no. You're on your own, These people are backstab. They're the worst people, I gotta tell you. and you're hearing that from an ex-mob guy.
Right.
I'm telling you, these are the worst people I've ever seen. And I got to tell you another thing. I went to trial 5 times. I was never even 5 minutes late for a trial. Never missed. I stood in front of 5 juries that could have put me away forever, right? Never missed. I get indicted on a white-collar crime. It was a racketeering case, defrauding the government. I get no bail. No bail. This guy's been on, 5 times he stood in front of a jury that could have put him away forever. This is a white-collar crime, basically, defrauding the government out of tax on gasoline. and because why? Because I beat them so many times, they figured, lock him up. It's harder to defend yourself and prepare a defense. And now you go rob a store, you go hit somebody over the head, you shoot a cop, and you're out the next day.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's crazy.
Was that Giuliani prosecuting you?
Huh?
Was Giuliani prosecuting you?
Giuliani prosecuted you, yeah.
Who ended up writing his introduction for his book.
No, really? Wow.
He wrote the foreword to my book.
So you've probably hung out with Giuliani since then and talked to him about this stuff?
We haven't been hanging out, but we did get together on a radio show, and we did speak afterwards. And yeah, he was pretty nice.
I got to ask him about this.
Yeah.
He went after you. He went after the mob. Look at the state of New York right now, and look at what the machine is doing to him. I have to wonder what his opinion would be on how things ended up.
Well, I got to tell you something. People have asked me about that. Michael, you should be, it should be sweet to see Giuliani go through the same thing. I said, why? I said, Giuliani did his job back then, okay? He was a federal prosecutor. His job was to go out and get the mob, and he did it. He used the racketeering law very effectively.
Isn't he responsible for it?
Yeah, well, he was the guy that really it was on the books for 10 years before he used it. And he figured it out, and he used it effectively. And then, boom, he put a lot of guys away, right? Mm-hmm. So, fortunately, I beat him because he told me and my lawyer, ask him about this. In the day of my arraignment, I got $1 million bail, I think it was. He said, Franzese, if I convict you on this case, you're getting double what your father got. My father got 50. And that's the kind of time they were giving us guys back then, 50, 100 years, like nothing, right? I said, hey, Rudy, bring it on. I beat you guys 4 times. Let's go for round 5. And it was a dumb thing to say at the time. But anyway, you don't want to give them any more reason to come after you. Fortunately, I was acquitted in that case. But when we went on this radio show, he says, Mike, I've been looking at you for the last 30 years, and I think your transformation is genuine. So he actually gave me a compliment. But I'll tell you this, he was a darn good mayor. Mm-hmm. He was a good prosecutor. And what they're doing to him now, because he aligned himself with Trump, it's just terrible. Terrible what they're doing.
I probably just romanticize it, but I want to believe there used to be honor to some degree. You know, that, like you mentioned, certain things were off limits. There was certain respect. Like you said, the cops come, you put your hands up, you don't fight. You play it out in the system. You know, everyone knows the rules, and you're going to play this game. You told Rudy, come at me, you win, and it's all through the process. Everybody understands. There's no honor at all today.
None.
You know, and again, maybe I'm just romanticizing because maybe there never was, and we just highlight these moments and we wish it was like that. But now it's just,
come on. I mean, first of all, I mean, you got to look what they did to Trump. The first time in 200 plus years that they go after a former president the way they did, with such vindictiveness and such garbage. Garbage. I mean, what they're prosecuting for is garbage. And then obviously what? 2 impeachments. Of, baloney, Mueller investigation with this stupid. You know what they did to me with this Russian thing? Listen to this. During the Mueller investigation, when I was back in the day, myself and my Russian partner, I was in partners with the Russian. We were doing gas business together, right? Well, we put up $6 million to buy condos in Trump Towers back then, right? And we gave them cash. Nothing wrong with that, right? Well, do you know that during the Mueller investigation, the FBI came to me and they were asking me about that incident that happened in the early 80s? And I said, wait a second, because my partner, his brother-in-law or something was a KGB agent. I said, are you guys trying to make a Russian connection because me and my partner, who was Russian, bought, condos at Trump Towers? And are you stretching to that? I said, I'll tell you what. Bring me in front of the Mueller investigation. I want to testify. I want to testify. You guys are really reaching. And I never heard from them again as the end of that. But that's how far they went.
How desperate they are.
How desperate.
You've had more modern, obviously, interactions with FBI and federal prosecutors. Yeah. How would you compare the guys today to the guys, in the 80s or 90s?
Well, look, it starts at the top. I think there was a different culture back then. Look. Again, we respected the agents. We just told them, don't frame us, do your job. I want to say we liked them. Obviously they were out to get us. But we didn't have this hatred, vendetta against them. But today, I don't know, man. They just operate on a different plane. But I think, look, I'm friends with a lot. I'm friends with Joe Pistone, Donnie Brasco. Great guy. People, oh, Michael, how could you be friends with him? Once again, he did his job better than we did ours. He was undercover for 6 years, and we didn't know it. When I say we, we're all one. We didn't know it, so he did a great job, so we became friends. You're a good guy. And there's a lot of agents that I know now that are sick of what they're seeing right now in the FBI. They're ashamed of it. They're retired, but they're ashamed of it. And this starts at the top, and it trickles down. I mean, it's like anything else.
How does this start for you? How do you join this family? You personally, but just in general.
Well, somebody's got to propose you. Somebody within that life has to propose you. You can't just go up to the guy and say, "Yeah, I'd like to join."
Membership.
Yeah. In my case, it was my dad. He proposed me for membership, and then you come in as a recruit, and you're told straight out, this is the life. It comes before anything. They told me if your mother is sick and dying, you're at her deathbed, we call you to service. You leave your mother, you come and serve us. From now on, we're number one before anything and everything. And when and if we feel you deserve this privilege or honor to become a member, we'll let you know. When I got made in 75, for 20 years prior to that, they had an expression that the books were closed. They weren't bringing in any new guys. The only time, and this was among all 5 families in New York, the only time they can bring in a new guy is if somebody died in the family and they replaced him. In the mid-80s, in the mid-70s, they opened the books and they started recruiting new guys. So when I got made, there was guys waiting 20 years to become made members,
What does that mean, made?
It means you take the oath and you officially become a member of that life. You start out as a soldier. And then if you work your way up, you do. If not, you remain a soldier. But that's your official title. And then you're officially part of the family. And so for me, I was a recruit for about 2.5 years. I had to prove myself worthy. And then 75, I got made.
Are they sending you out on certain jobs to see what you will, what you'll do? Obviously, you got to do it. And then when the time comes, that's that.
Got to do what you're told.
Yeah.
What are those jobs like? Like when you're first starting out?
Look, let's get it out in the open. Everybody says in order to become a member of that life, you got to kill somebody, And all I can say is this. There was a lot of guys that were being made at that point, And you just don't go around killing everybody. You can't find somebody to kill and say, okay, I killed somebody. Can I now, get made? But you have to be ready to do that if you're told to do it. And, here's another thing. When you take the oath to become a made member, it's an oath of omerta. It's not an oath. Omerta means silence. You're not even supposed to admit that the life exists. You don't take an oath to lie, cheat, kill, murder. That's not the oath. Now, obviously, those things happen as part of that life, but the oath is to be silent, never talk about the life, never admit that it even exists, and that's it. So, and I want to get that clear, because people think you take the oath, okay, now I'm taking an oath to kill somebody. No, you're not. Taking an oath to be quiet, basically. But look, things happen in that life.
But there definitely is murder. I mean, I wonder how many people are in East River or underneath buildings.
Bachelor's Grove.
In Manhattan. Yeah.
Well,
Midlothian Turnpike
you don't
in
have to
Chicago.
wonder anymore. There's been so many informants that,
True.
that talk about it.
So there's the Midlothian Turnpike in south side of Chicago, south suburbs. They call it Bachelor's Grove. And this is what we're told. I mean, I haven't researched or anything. You could probably check this out. This is where Al Capone dumped all his bodies. There's a bog down there. And now it's considered one of the most haunted locations in the world.
Oh, wow.
And weirdos go down there for satanic rituals and other creepy...
Of course they do.
I mean, I'm familiar I've heard about it.
Yeah.
I haven't visited.
Yeah, there's, when the Long Island serial killer was happening and they found his graveyard, supposedly the theory was that it could have also been a mafia dumping ground.
Yeah.
On Gilgo Beach.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of people out there.
But this was recent, wasn't it?
That's over the past 30 years.
Wow.
That the bodies were
So
found.
you're saying it may not be a serial killer?
I think it was, but I think he could have been sharing that dumb spot with other people.
Like I said, basically, you don't have to guess anymore. There's been so many informants that have said things over the years. Nothing is really secret anymore.
Were you worried about surveillance in the 70s at all?
Constantly.
Yeah.
Mean, I became a major target. My dad was a major target. He came right on me the minute I got involved. And I had so many undercover investigations on me.
It's like wiretapping. Like, what are you thinking about back
You
then?
worry about everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my father, he gave me a lot of good. He was my mentor, and my dad was a good student of the life. He knew it well. And he used to tell me, he used to pick up a phone. He used to say, you see this? This is a cop. Don't ever talk on the phone. It's a cop, Watch everybody. Be very careful, So he drummed it into my head early on. I was a good listener. I paid attention, because you want to survive in that life and prosper, you gotta know what you're doing. It's a tough life to navigate. There's no question.
You said there's a lot of informants. Is this basically the life itself, the style is breaking down? Everyone's just spilling the beans and walking away?
I'll tell you again. I'll give you a story. Chaz Palminteri again in the movie The Bronx Tale. Remember when he's talking to Cologio, and Cologio says to him, "Chaz, Sonny, is it better to be loved or to be feared?"
Oh, yeah.
Remember? And Sonny says, "In my line of words, better to be feared." All right. So I talked to Chaz afterwards. I said, "Chaz, remember that line? What do you think about that now?" I said, "Oh, Michael, in your life, it's definitely better to be feared." I said, "You're wrong, Chaz." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Let me tell you why." He said, "Yes, fear kept people in line. There's no question about it. But what happened in my life is that when the RICO statute came in, and they were going to guys that were in trouble, and they tell them straight out, listen, you cooperate with us, or you're going to get 50 or 100 years. There's no more parole. You're doing 85%. We're going to lock you up someplace. You're going away, and that's it. Or you can cooperate with us. We'll put you in the witness protection program. We'll give you some money. We'll change your identity. And don't worry about it. The guy you testify against is going away forever." Well, what happened, the fear of the life was transferred to the fear of the government. And that's why so many guys flipped. Don't let anybody tell you any different. Yeah. When these guys, most of them say, "Oh, you know what, the mob did me wrong, and that's why I flipped." Let me tell you something. We all know. I mean, nobody's a saint in that life. You get involved in the street, things are not going to go right all the time. Guys don't want to go to jail. So, but when you love somebody, you're not going to hurt them. You're not going to hurt them. That love is stronger than any fear. And that's what destroyed the life. There's no question about it.
Wow. I mean, I just think about it simply. A person, if somebody loves you, they'll step in front of, they'll take a bullet for you.
Exactly.
But if they're scared of you, they're running.
Exactly. They're going to run, or they're going to seek protection somewhere else. And that's what happened. And look, I don't like the use of informants for the government. I don't think it's I don't think it's good. You know, I really don't. You know, they give guys break. Guys can murder 5 guys. And because, you know, this guy has a bigger name, they'll give the guy that killed 5 guys a pass, and they'll want to get the guy with the bigger name. Why? Bigger headlines means something more.
So, I mean, the families, they still exist, don't they?
They exist, yeah. It's not going away in my lifetime. But it's not what it was before.
Yeah, I mean, what do they do now?
Well, I really don't know. I mean, I'm not too up on it. But, you know,
I'm
listen.
imagining it's probably a bit more mundane.
It is. I mean, look, they're pretty resourceful, you know, so they'll figure things out. I mean, listen, gambling, you still got bookmakers on the street, you know, and stuff like that. They're still running numbers. But I don't know of any major scams that are going on right now that are really making money.
You know what I never really understood is in all these movies when there's this, like, and they do this in every show, there's always some guy with a gambling debt to the mafia, and they beat the crap out of him, and they're like, you got 3 days. It's like, why did they lend money to a guy they knew couldn't pay it back? You got to make money, right?
Yes. First of all, the only time somebody's going to really get beat up is if they're just thumbing their nose in your face and they're saying, screw you. Because why are you going to beat somebody up? You want to get paid.
Right.
So you give the guy a break. You know going in, you know that you're going to have a little issue. Look, I had more money on the street than you can imagine, you know, back then because I was making a lot of money. And, you know, I knew the times guys couldn't pay. You're not going to beat them up or put them in a hospital because give them a break, let them continue paying you. You know, the only time, like I said, that happened, and it's rare, you know, it's rare, is if somebody just was way out of hand and thumbing their nose in your face and just acting like a jackass, then maybe he's going to get hurt. But other than that, it didn't happen a lot.
Yeah, it makes no sense. That's why I'm like, I don't understand. You know, they give money to a guy who can't pay it back, then they beat him up so he can't pay it back.
Yeah.
If you want money, you know, and that's what we're seeing now. As this is kind of funny as a total aside.
See, but that's what law enforcement makes you believe, that we're out there, you know, breaking legs and we're hurting everybody that owes us money. It wasn't true.
Were the terms of the loans that were given like really awful? Because it's another trope. It's like, you know, 20%, some ridiculous amount that's almost impossible to pay back.
Normally I'll tell you what was common, 1 to 5% a week. But you're not going to charge. Yeah, you're not going to charge a guy 5 points that you knew he couldn't pay. If somebody came to me at the time and they were in business and they were making money and they needed money, they couldn't go to a bank, and I would kind of evaluate the situation. Okay, you can pay me 3% a week. If not, I might give it out at 1 point. That's 52% a year. What's wrong with that? You know, it all depended on the situation.
Yeah, I mean, why do you think it is that all the movies, all the shows only ever show this as a bunch of, you know, malintent, malicious, callous? They go and they hurt people. To be fair, like we talk about a Bronx Tale, it's not always that way, but it's always you know, beating up a working like there's a guy who's got a gambling debt and they come and they, you know, harass his family and things like this.
I think, you know, law enforcement and the media has made that life out to be just that way. And so it's expressed in Hollywood, you know, in movies and TV series, but it's not like that all the time. It does happen. I'm not saying we were angels out there. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of the things are just, you know, embellished to a degree where it's, to me, I look at it and it's silly.
Who was the last, like, unhinged gangster? It was like a Gallo character?
No, Roy DeMeo.
Okay, when was
Roy
that?
DeMeo, you know who that was.
I know the name. I remember when that was.
Roy DeMeo, you look him up afterwards. He was allegedly killed over 200 people. He had a place called the Gemini Lounge.
Okay.
And Roy DeMeo was a serial killer.
Wow.
But Roy would have been a serial killer even if he wasn't in the mafia.
Either way.
The mafia didn't make him that.
Right.
He just had more advantages because he was part of LA. And eventually he got killed.
So I was going to say, how did they handle that type of figure? Like it seems like he got away with a lot of murder, though, until at some point, what does he step on someone's toes and they're like, this is it? Or
you know what? Guys like that don't last because sooner or later they're going to get, somebody's going to say, well, we need this guy for? You know, he's a loose cannon. Let's just get rid of him.
Right.
And that happens. It happens a couple of times.
That's what happened to Joe Gallo eventually.
Yeah, Joe Gallo, yes, but I think there's a lot of wrong impressions about Joe Gallo. Like everybody, Joe Gallo killed Colombo or shot Colombo.
Right.
It was him. I don't believe that.
You don't believe he shot him, or?
I don't believe he was behind that.
Wow.
I believe it was the FBI.
Oh, wow. And they framed him?
Yeah.
Wow.
No, they didn't frame Gallo. Gallo got killed afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they made it seem like this might have come from Gallo. But I believe they've never proved who shot Joey that day.
Wow.
I believe it was the FBI. They hated Columbus.
It was like 4 people, right, that showed up and shot him, supposedly.
Gallo?
Yeah.
Yeah, in Umberto's.
Right, on his birthday. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a crazy story. Crazy Joe Gallo.
What would happen if, because you mentioned that some of these guys are flamboyant or eccentric. This guy's crazy. Was it? I don't want to use the word common, but I mean, would other guys just get together and be like, the boss has got to go?
Well, listen, Gotti was in trouble because he didn't have a sanctioned hit on Castellano. Normally, if you're going to take out a boss, you got to discuss it with members of the commission at least, or you got to get some kind of sanction on it. He didn't. And, the Chin, Gigante, was very powerful. He was the head of the Genovese family at that time. He had an attempt on Gotti because he did that. Look, it all depends in a situation like that. I mean, look, Joe Colombo, people were upset with him because he was on the news and all of that. But I don't think it got to a point where anybody was looking to kill him.
Right.
I don't believe that. They say that Carlo Gambino was behind it. I don't believe any of that. There's no evidence to prove that. Mm-hmm. And I never heard that on the street, really. You hear rumors.
Right.
But, look, you're going to kill a boss. You better be prepared.
I forget who it was. Maybe it was during Dewey when he was investigating everybody. And someone hired a hitman to take him out. And then
Dewey?
Yeah, right. And then they said, don't do that. And then they hired the same hitman to then take out the guy who planned taking out Dewey.
Yes, correct.
I forget who that was, but
correct. No,
it just seems like word spreads, and once people hear, they're like, that's a bad idea. Don't do that because it's going to be worse for us.
Because we did, the idea if you start taking out politicians and cops, you're going to have more heat on you than ever. So you fight them in court.
Yeah. I'm curious your thoughts on Chicago gangs, and not just Chicago gangs, but you got East Coast, West Coast gangs as well. But it's funny because we don't call them gangsters, we call them gangbangers. But there is some similarity. Is it just that these gangs in the cities are, I don't know what the right word would be, less organized than the families were? Or, what's your view on that?
Well, look, we had a very definite structure, and we had rules that you had to abide by, and we had discipline, and we had respect, among one another. And I know, law enforcement would laugh at that, but they know, look, we survived and prospered, Cosa Nostra did in America, for over 100 years under some very difficult conditions. And like I said, we had connections right into the White House. So in order to survive and prosper like that for that length of time, you have to have structure and discipline and authority, and you got to have respect of the life. So nobody can deny that. And if they did, they're kidding themselves, because that's a fact. These gangbangers don't have that. They don't have that structure. I don't believe they have that loyalty among one another. These Venezuelan gangs that are coming in, I don't know. This is something that's kind of foreign to me. They have no value for human life. And I guess it's culturally because where they came from, they grew up in a tough way. So the only way they knew how to earn was to rob and steal. Mm-hmm. And, it's part of their life. But they shouldn't be here in the United States.
It seems like they're more day to day, right? We're just trying to survive. Whereas families back then, they had longevity in mind.
Absolutely.
We want this to keep going on.
Absolutely.
What I always heard when I was young in Chicago is most of the gangs, they're, I don't know, tangentially organized. They're moderately organized to some degree. They've got rules. They would always say, when you're in the gangs, they're usually selling drugs, and that's a principal way to make money. But you're not allowed to do them. And if the gang catches you doing drugs, you're stealing product. You're stealing product, and you're putting them in legal jeopardy. But it wasn't very sophisticated. However, what I'd often hear from people is that the Latin Kings were much more like the crime families, that they were older guys with families that ran the show. And, because me and my friends would always be concerned. But the way it usually happens on the South Side is somebody would pull up in a car next to you and say, "What you is?" And it's like they're trying to figure out what gang you're in. I remember my friends were walking down the street and a car pulled up and they were like, "What you is?" And they were like, "What?" He's like, "What you is?" And the kid was like, skateboarders, and they started laughing, and they were like, "Man," and they drove off. But they thought these kids were in a gang because that's what happens.
Yeah.
So we knew the gangs were Some of them, there was one gang that would just smoke pot all day, and they'd sit around, and everybody was cool with them. It was a gang. If you want to get in the gang, they V you, they beat the crap out of you, and then you're in the gang. And then what do you do when you're in the gang? They sold pot, and then they smoked it, and everyone was like, nobody cares about those guys. The cops didn't even care about those guys. But then there was another faction related to that gang. They weren't necessarily the same gang. It's kind of weird. I don't know. And those guys would rob you blind. They'd act nice, then they'd find out where you live, come in and take everything you got. And so when my friends were always talking about it, the one thing they always pointed out was the Latin kings will treat you with respect. There's a 35-year-old guy who's a high-ranking dude in the gang. He's got a family. He doesn't want any trouble. He doesn't want young kids coming around with guns and doing dumb things in his community. And it was much, much more organized, like the crime families were. I don't know if you ever had any experience with them or.
Yeah, I did have some experience with Latin Kings, and I agree with you on that. They were more organized and, they were adults. Let's put it that way in crime.
Yep.
But, these gangbangers, 90% of their income comes from drugs, as far as I saw, from drugs. And they weren't sophisticated in their criminal activities. They rob, they do what they do, and they're big in the drug business. We were not, and we had a level of sophistication about us. We got around politicians. We controlled the unions. We were into contracting. We did a lot of things that were, just different level than most of these street gangs.
You infiltrated institutions.
Absolutely.
How do you make it to the White House? Is that just because you get a politician starting out real young,
yeah.
and they happen to ascend, or are they helped to get up there?
Look, without mentioning his name, I had 18 licenses to collect tax on every gallon of gasoline. I couldn't get the license. I had a political connection.
Right.
And at the time, my connection was the most powerful Democrat in all of New York. And, he had relationships in the White House. And I was paying him.
Can I guess a name? No, I'm just
kidding. Probably could.
Is there a bridge named after him?
Huh?
Is there a bridge named after him?
No.
Okay.
So you when you went to prison, that was over the gasoline thing?
Yeah.
What exactly was that? Are you allowed to talk about it?
Yeah. I mean, basically we figured out we had a scheme to defraud the government out of tax on every gallon of gasoline. And I ran that for about between 7 and 8 years. I had the Russian mob guys were my partners. And basically at the time, the tax on gasoline, state and local, was about 25 to 30 cents, and the feds were 9 cents. So we had about 40 cents a gallon. And at the height of my operation, we're selling 500 million gallons of gas a month, and we're taking down 20, 30, 40 cents a gallon, whatever we wanted to whatever deal we wanted to make. So one point in time, we're taking in 8 to 10 million a week.
Wow.
In real money.
Where does that money go?
Well, we had expenses, But
You can't say that, Tim.
yeah.
No, but as an aside, I mean, with a profit like that, general question, I mean, well, are you allowed to say like how much you got personally?
Yeah. Listen, it was basically I'll tell you what happened. When I realized what I had, and I can get into the whole backstory, but when I realized what I had and that this was going to be a real deal, I went to my boss at the time, Carmine Persico. He's dead now. And I said, Junior, we called him Junior. I said, Junior, look, I'm going to show you more money than you've ever seen before. And he looked at me, he said, we don't do drugs. I said, Junior, come on. I hate drugs. Nothing to do with drugs. He said, what is it? I said, it's gas. He said, gas? I said, yes. It's a tax scheme. We're going to defraud the government out of tax on every gallon of gasoline. I said, but here's what's going to happen. He said, what? I said, everybody's going to want to get involved in this. Across the board, all 5 families, when they see the amount of money, is it going to be that much? I said, trust me. When they see the amount of money, everybody's going to want a piece. When that happens, we're going to blow it. So what do you want me to do? I says, every time I have an argument, I got to win. I said, I'm going to be right. I got to win. Play no politics, nothing like that. I said, just make me win. I'll be right every time. I says, and I'll show you more money than you've ever seen before. So I'll never forget. He sat back. He said, show me. Okay. I was bringing him $1.2 million a week. That buys a lot of loyalty. I never lost an argument. And I'm telling you, everybody, Gotti and people came at me. I'll tell you a funny story. I've said it before. The word gets out when you're doing that, right? And I had a pretty big crew. So Fat Tony was the boss of the Genovese family. And do you know who Fat Tony was?
I heard the name,
Okay.
yeah.
Right out of, you know who he is, Tim?
No.
Right out of Central Casting. He was about 5'6",
Simpsons.
you know, a little bit chubby, wore a fedora, smoked a cigar, and had the gravelly voice, right? Just like that, typical mob guy. So he had a club in Harlem. So he calls me, he sends for me rather, to come and see him. So I go put it on record. Whenever you go see the boss of another family, you got to put it on record with your guy that you're going there, right? And I was a captain at the time. So I'll never forget, it was a summer day. It was in August, I think. So I go see him in Harlem, and he's sitting outside his social club with 3 or 4 guys. And he's sitting there, hands on his belly. He's got the cigar and the fedora. He comes up to me, he says, we just do all the niceties. He said, Mike, let me ask you a question. I said, what, Tony? He said, you're doing good, huh? I said, yeah, Tony, I'm okay. He says, you making money? I said, Tony, no complaints. He says, what do you got, gas or something? I said, yeah, you know, we figured out a scheme. We're doing okay. You're robbing the government? I said, absolutely. He said, that's good. That's good. So then he says to me, he says, I need a favor from you. I said, Tony, anything you want. You're the boss. What could I do for you? He says, just like this. I got these 5 Mamalukes around me. They can't earn 3 cents. He says, you give them a job? I said, yeah, Tony, I can give them a job. He said, what will they do? I said, well, I had about 300 gas stations I either operated or leased at the time, right? I said, Tony, how about I give them a job? You know, they'll run a gas station for me. It's easy. They collect the money and they'll watch the guys. I said, but Tony, don't let them rob me. You know these guys, if rob you, I'll cut off their hands, their wrists, just like that, right? I said, no, you don't have to do that. He said, don't worry about it. So I said, you got it, Tony. He says, how much are they going to earn? So now I'm thinking, I don't want to insult the boss, but I'm thinking for a minute. I said, Tony, how about I give him $1,500 a week, and this back in the 80s, $1,500 a week each. He looks at me, he almost dropped the cigar. He goes, $1,500? Give them $500, give me the $1,000. I said, Tony, you got it, right?
Man, that's amazing.
In front of them.
Yes, right in front of them, yeah.
Wow.
So I'm saying you make a lot of friends when you're doing that.
Yeah.
And you spread the money around, you make people earn. You know, that's part of that life.
So, I mean, was this just that you owned 300 gas stations and you didn't
We
pay
either
your
owned
taxes?
or operated. We either owned or released them, you know, whatever. If we could, but we owned all the, you know, Grand Central Parkway, you know, all those Parkway stations. We had
Really?
Oh, wow,
And
really?
you're just scooping up all the tax.
all the tax. Yeah.
But
Wow.
are you literally just not paying taxes?
You're not paying the tax, yeah. I had 18 companies. They were shell companies. And it was a daisy chain. You could
Right.
get, the way we worked it, you could get about 10 months out of the government before they come down on you. And come down on you. All we had was an office that this thing was operating on. So they come
find
down
nothing.
at 10 months, they rate it, we close it down, we jump onto the next license in a different part of
How
town.
soon after you started this does it take for them to kind of start catching on?
10 months.
Is it 10 months for you? Okay, and then how do they catch you eventually?
Well, they don't. You know, they never caught us. The only way they got us is
Wow.
my partner became an informant.
Ah, that's
Yeah.
it. That's it. It's always
Okay. But were you on trial for that stuff?
I didn't go. I took a plea on that.
Okay.
That's the one I took the plea on.
Wow.
So how does it? What is you basically have a shell company? It's running gas stations. It doesn't pay taxes, and they come to this company and say you're not paying your taxes, and you're like, okay, well then the company's out of business. Is that it?
Yeah. I mean, you're simplifying it, but
Right.
we had to give reports. So every month I had accountants working, and every month they would send in the report, but not pay any money, and it would be a whole process. And then finally, after 10 months, they're mad, they're upset, and they come and raid your office. The office is closed, the license is gone, and we're on to the next license in another part of town.
How much would you have made if you paid the taxes? I mean, gas stations make money, right?
Yeah, but here's the deal. Let's say we had, and you know how it is in Long Island. You can have a big intersection where you have 4 gas stations, one on each corner, right?
Yeah.
So I'd scoop up one gas station. I'd go to the other 3. I'd call them all in. I said, come here, I want to talk to all you guys. I said, listen, here's the deal. Whatever you sell your gas for, I'm going to be 2 cents under you. Wow. If you try to go 2 cents under me, I'll go 5 cents under that. You go 5, I'll go 10.
Wow.
I said, until I put you out of business, I'll keep going. So that's the deal. Now, they kind of knew what I was doing, but they didn't know. So before long, they're all buying gas from me anyway, you know? And I would go to them and I'd say, you're a mobile station. How many loads you buying from mobile? Oh, I buy 6. Okay. Buy 4 from them, buy 2 from me. Because for me, I'm going to save you 10 cents a gallon. That's a lot of money for, 10 cents a gallon cheaper. All I do is I give them a bill of sale, all taxes included. That's all they cared about.
Right.
You know?
So this ended up actually, these other gas stations were benefiting.
Oh, absolutely. Let me tell you something. We were stealing the tax money, but we were cutting prices at the pump. So we were giving some of the money back.
Right
you would love us right now. They called us the Robin Hoods because we were giving money back to the people because we were digging into the tax money. So we would drop the prices at the pump.
How?
Because we didn't care if we made 10 cents a gallon, 20 cents a gallon. What was the difference?
How long after the gas shortages in the city was this?
Oh, well, this was when we were doing this. It was I started this in like 78.
So Carter.
We were right up to 85, yeah.
Wow. Because the gas shortages, the lines in like the Bronx and Brooklyn, and you had different plate numbers. You can go get your gas. There was just like shootouts sometimes waiting for
you know how it got? I bought a terminal off of British Petroleum. I think it was 3 million gallons it would hold. But we were buying barges from all the major oil companies. Now, when the feds had an inkling, they were trying to figure out what we were doing. Well, they went to all the majors and they said, these guys are mob guys and they're buying gas from you and they're going to your gas station. And they would say, oh, we're upset with them and we're going to watch for it. They didn't care because we were buying the gas off of them and selling it back to their stations. They didn't care. We were increasing their business.
Yeah.
Incredible.
One day I had a Mazda dealership that I owned, a Mazda and a Chevrolet dealership. So I'm in my office and 2 FBI agents come over and they said, Franzese, we got to talk to you. So I said, okay, we go outside. And they said, listen, this was after about 5 years we're in the business. We know what you're doing. We just can't figure it out. Okay? Tell us what you're doing. We'll give you a pass. Yeah, they're going to give me a pass, right?
Yeah.
I was born in the morning, not yesterday. I said, guys, I go to the gas station. I put gas in I don't know what you're talking about. If you want to buy a car, I'll give you a good price on a car. You don't want to tell us? I said, I don't know what you're talking about. They cursed me out and everything. We're going to put you away forever and all this. Guys, yeah, okay. Come back later. You feel better.
Did you just say, I'm running a bunch of gas stations. It's a legitimate business.
No.
We make a lot of money.
I never even admitted to the
Too much.
Oh, not even that you owned it.
So I have nothing to do with it. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah.
How about getting involved with the unions in the city? It's such a big deal. The unions today still seem like they're kind of mob-ish in the way they make people vote in certain ways.
Yeah, not like before when we had control over the unions, Look, we started the unions way back when. I mean, it was with our help, I should say, we started the unions, but huge money maker. I mean, I had a job in Glen Oaks. Mm-hmm. There were apartment to condominium conversions. Okay. It was 3,500 of them. It was the biggest job in the city, in the country at that time. Whoa. So my friend was a contractor there, and he called me up, and I made a deal with Jerry Gutterman to keep the union out. Mm-hmm. I said, under 2 conditions, because we'll keep the union out, we'll save you some money. I said, but I got to be a general contractor, and all the subs will come in through me. So I became the contractor. We kept the union out. I went to every single trade. I said, look, we'll put one of your people in so that it is a union job, but only one person at a time. And then we paid them, for that, and we kept the union out. And Gutterman made a lot more money than he would have with the union. I was making money as the GC. I mean, that's how we worked it. So everybody was happy at the end of the day. They make it seem like everybody was happy.
Right.
People, Donald Trump, come on, he was with the mob and he was paying off the mob. I said, yes, so was, Jerry Gutterman and so was Hemsley and everybody else. If you wanted to build something in New York, you had to deal with us, period.
Because you were running concrete, right?
Everything, yeah.
Everything.
Concrete big. Yeah. Concrete was among the families. They all had a piece of that, but everything.
You built the city. In a big way.
Absolutely. And it's built, right? The buildings look beautiful.
Sure, it's built.
Yeah, they're not falling down, so we did a good job.
Things are getting kind of bad these days, though. Buildings are still standing, but it's kind of sad how it's being mismanaged.
I think the unions are going to start turning against the Democrats, honestly, because I'm seeing. Well, the Teamsters did, yeah. I'm thinking I know people in hotel and trades union, and they've pretty much voted a certain way for a long time, but they're giving hotels up to immigrants now, to the illegal aliens coming in. And I know I have family we used to work in that hotel, and we're not working there anymore because
the only union the real union that they have locked up is the teachers union.
Yeah, for sure.
Because they don't care about the kids. They're sacrificing our kids, and it's terrible. Terrible.
That's wild. Real quick, just because the gas station story is so fascinating to me. What was the reason it ended? You had a guy turn informant and they came after you?
My partner was, he was 6'5". He weighed 450 pounds. Yeah. But he was.
That was muscle.
No, it wasn't. But you know what? He wasn't a sloppy fat. He was big, he was a big guy. And we're partners for 7 years. We never had an ill word between us. His kids used to call me Uncle Mike. My kids called him, Uncle Larry. But he got in trouble on an unrelated case, a tax case. He's halfway through the trial. He and I, we had a jet plane, we had a helicopter, we had homes in Boca Raton next to each other, right?
Oh, well.
So he gets in trouble on this case. He's in trial, and he says, "I'm not staying. I can't go to jail. Look at how big I am." I said, "No, Larry." I said, "Maybe they'll give you 2 years if you get convicted." I said, "If you run, they're going to catch you sometime. They're going to add on another 5." I said, "Finish the trial." Can't do it. We had a compound in Panama. We had down there. The reason we had it there is allegedly there was no, what do you call it, deportation.
Extradition.
Yeah, extradition rather, between Panama and the United States. So we had this compound down there. And so he says, "I'm going to live down there." He says, "I can still run part of the operation from there." I said, "You're crazy." But he went, right? Well, this is what this maniac does. His daughter is getting married in Austria, and he starts sending out invitations from Panama that his daughter's in. So now there's no extradition, right? But the feds don't care about that. What do? They make some kind of deal with Noriega, and they go down there and they kidnap him in the middle of the night.
Damn.
And they bring him to Florida.
Larry.
And the FBI agent told me this afterwards. He said, "Michael, he's 450. He took one look at that little cot, and he says, 'I'll tell you anything you want to know about Michael.'" And he became the informant. And he blew the whistle on the whole operation. So that's when I took a plea for that. But
So is that guy in jail or did he make a deal?
Listen to what happens, right? He just loved the game of doing this. I mean, the guy was insane. He was very smart. Don't get me wrong, but he testifies. He didn't testify. He makes the deal against me. They release him. They give him back $2.5 million of stolen gas tax money. That was part of the deal. And I told the feds at the time, I said, "Listen, he'll never be out of the gas business. He knows it too well. There's too much money in it, right?" So he leaves New York. He goes to Florida, goes to Texas, and he starts an operation down there. He has his whole family working for him. Well, after about 2 years, the feds go down and they indict him there. He immediately tells them, "There's some things I didn't tell you about Michael. I was already doing my time." They didn't care.
Damn.
And what happens? His son and his daughter testified against him. Wow. Yeah, he got convicted and they gave him 20 years.
Wow.
He ended up doing 17 under 20. He did more time than me. I did 8.
Sheesh.
He did 17 years. And he got out, and 2 years later, he passed away.
Wow.
Damn. Yeah. What's it like being in prison when you come from a family? Like, are there people inside that help?
I never had a problem in prison. My father, again, very smart guy. He says to me, "Son, when you go to prison," he said, "remember these 3 words. They're going to help you get by with no trouble. Please, thank you, excuse me." He said, "Because, Mike, everybody in prison who never got respect on the street, they want all the respect in there. So they want to prove something, right? You bunk into somebody, excuse me, somebody you want to break in line with your friends in front on the chow line. Please, do you mind if I get?" "No, it's okay. Somebody hands you something, thank you." Never had a problem. But I saw a lot of stuff go on in there.
That's Chicago growing up.
Yeah.
Respect. And, because I know people who grew up in nicer parts of the city or grew up in different places, and they got a bone to pick because you don't dare disrespect me. How dare you? And I'm like, you bring that attitude to Chicago and you'll find a bullet. Mm-hmm. If there's somebody, you don't even know if they're in a gang or not. If you're at a bar and someone's getting aggressive with you, I'm so sorry about that, man. Can I buy you a drink?
Exactly.
You're good. Yeah. The fight you avoid is the fight you win. But there's just too many stories where 2 guys, one guy's aggressive. He gets at it. He says, "You don't know who you're effing with." He shows a gun. Someone else pulls a gun. And then there's a couple of dead guys. And it's just for what?
Yeah.
For what? I knew people. The one who always really bothered me was the road rage from people who don't understand the city.
Yep.
And they're driving on the highway or whatever, and someone cuts them off, and they start screaming and flicking them off, and then that car slams their brakes on, and the guy steps out of the car and he's got a gun. It's a gangbanger, and it's just like, dude, it's not worth it, man.
No.
You got cut off. Carry on with your day. Go feed your family. Get your job, and so that I understand. But what you're saying, people on the street, they want respect. They don't get other places.
They don't get it in there. And I saw some, stupid. I mean, there's a lot of stupidity in there with guys, but. I did almost 3 years in solitary. They had me. The feds were 29 months and 7 days to be exact. Feds were pretty upset with me. They tried to get me to cooperate when I walked away, and they got even with me in a lot of ways.
Where were you? What prison?
Well, they had me on diesel therapy for a while. They had me shipped all over the country. But I did most of my time in Terminal Island and Lompoc.
Okay. Wow.
Both out west in California.
Wow.
Terminal Island was the best prison to be in. It was a medium security, but it was right on the water, you know, in sunny
view.
California. It was great. No, you guys see what happened. We were right on the water, right? So a lot of times we're out there, and girls used to come by in a boat, and they used to go by, pull their tops down, and you see a wave of people running to the fence, right? Even the cops would laugh at it, you know, and they'd be on that fence, and these girls would come. Almost every weekend it would happen. It was a great place to do time. Yeah, it was pretty good.
That's what you should be asking for if you can, huh?
You hear stories about Lucky Luciano. You know, he had a pretty sweet deal. And was he Dannemora? It seems like he had they had let him have his own kitchen and stuff.
You know, in a state place, you couldn't do that in the feds. In the state, they were looser back then.
Right.
It wasn't like Goodfellas. You didn't have that kind of a luxury there. But you had it better in certain state places. Look, we knew how to conduct ourselves in there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, look, we ate a little better. We take care of the guards. We had Italian guys in the kitchen, and they'd take care of us. You know, but basically, prison is prison.
Yeah, you don't want to go there.
No, you don't want to go there.
Especially now in the cities, like New York City's prisons, it just seems so corrupt. Like whatever they have Diddy in is, you know, that prison doesn't have a good history.
Let me tell you something. I was in. This is a funny story. When they locked me up, they had me in. I was in MDC in New York, and then they'd taken me across country to my designated spot, which was Terminal Island. So on the way, they brought me to Lewisburg, right? Penitentiary, level 6. And at the time, all the blacks in D.C. had rioted, and they burnt their prison down. So they were dispersing the blacks all over the system. So they didn't have a place to put them, so they opened up the basement in Pennsylvania, and it was condemned. They weren't allowed to open it, but they opened it up for this, right? So now the feds are mad at me. They bring me there to Lewisburg, and they bring me to the basement. And it's 250 black guys and me, right? Now, I'm a young guy. I'm 30-something years old at that time. And as I'm walking down, they got me shackled, and I'm walking through the tier down there. And these black guys are going, "Oh, Whitey, we're going to get you." And I'm saying, man, I'm going to have a tough time here. Hope these guys figure out who I am. That's what I'm saying to myself. Right. No sooner than I say that, it was like God was shining down on me. They had televisions on the tier, right? So as I'm walking down, all of a sudden, newsflash, Michael Franzese, captain in the Colombo family, stole $2 billion. You know, and they're looking at the TV and they're looking at me, and all of a sudden they start cheering.
Oh, that's amazing.
I said, God, thank you. Right?
That's amazing.
Yeah, and then I had it made down there for a while.
How long were you there?
I was there 3 months. They kept me there before they moved me out. Yeah.
Are they driving you across the country when they're doing this?
No, you get in a bus, plane, you know, whatever. You get in some plane that the marshals confiscated off of some drug dealers that, you know, you're almost praying it goes down. But, you know, at that day, too, I'll never forget, one of the cops calls me over to CO. He says, "Come into the bathroom for a minute." I says, "Why?" He says, "Come in there, Mike." So I go in the bathroom. He says, "Look out the window." So the window's got bars on it, right? So coming down from the top is a pillowcase with, you know, tied from a sheet, right? So I go and I pull it in, and I open it up, and there's cigarettes and everything there. And in the note, it says, "Love Jimmy." It was Jimmy Burke, because all the guys were upstairs that they got locked up there, right? So he had sent it down. He said, "Anything you need down there, let us know." So now they had, when I was in prison, I cared about 2 things, visits and phone calls. That's it, because I wanted to try to keep my family together, right? So they only had 2 phones on that tier for 250 guys, and they were on every other day. So, you know, the phones are a hot spot. You never get to the phone. It's very hard. So you got to have a connection. So I grabbed one of the black guys and I said, "Listen, who's your leader here? Who's your main guy?" You know, so he points him out. I says, "Call him over here." So he comes over. I'm in the bathroom, and I lay everything out. I said, "Look, I don't smoke. You got cigarettes, you got soups, you got this. Anything you guys need, you got. Just let me know. I got friends upstairs." He's, "Okay, what do you want?" I said, "That one phone on the wall, that belongs to me." He's, "You got it." And that's how I made the deal for the phone, right? And I was able to call my wife a few times a day, every other day. But you know, you got to maneuver like that in there to get some kind of conveniences.
Are they making a movie about all this stuff?
Yes.
I'm like, I want to see it.
Yeah.
I want to watch it.
Yeah, for real.
We'll have a script by Thanksgiving, and I think it'll go into production early next year.
That's awesome.
We need a good Mafia
Congrats.
movie, man.
Yeah, they're the
Those
best.
are always so good.
I love those movies.
Yeah. Hey, gotta love them. Right? Yeah.
Man, it's funny to hear these stories and then just think about how crappy everything is today. You know what I mean? I mean, it's the only thing I can point to because it's what we're experiencing every day. It's what we talk about. And then it's almost like you said they called you Robin Hood.
Yeah.
It seemed more gentlemanly. You know, now it's just chaos and destruction. These younger criminals, the people coming across the border. It's kind of wild because I suppose when I talk about, you know, the neighborhoods being safe under the Mafia, it's this idea that there was still some respect for life and an understanding that I don't want my family put at risk, so I'm going to try and minimize these. It's almost like how in you know, European countries have this idea of war crimes. If we go to war, okay, fine, but you can't do this because that crosses the line. I don't want you gassing my people. I won't gas your people. But now we're entering this territory of all that matters is winning. And so the gangs now in Chicago and other places, they literally don't care. They'll hand a gun to a 13-year-old and say, "Go do what needs to be done," because you're gonna, you know, the kid will go to juvie for 5 years.
Yeah. Or he gets out. He's got to be released at 25.
Right.
He gets indoctrinated while he's in there, and now he's a full-fledged member. He comes out. I mean, I had some experiences with it, but you know, I have to say something. You know, my YouTube platform is pretty big, and I built it on telling mob stories and crime stories, and I'm starting to get away from that. There's only so many stories you can tell. I'm not going to make things up. And so I've been getting into a little bit more of the politics, and I got a big platform on Rumble now where you can speak freely. But, you know, one of the things that's really bugging me, and I try to make people understand, you know, to me, the sin of omission is as serious as the sin of commission, maybe even more serious. When you know something's wrong and you have a platform, okay, to where you can try to make it right or at least educate people and you don't do it, that's wrong. So what I'm saying is, you know, with Biden, one of the worst things, and maybe this is part of my upbringing, part of my life, when you're in a position of trust and you violate that trust in such a way that it's dangerous and it's hurting people in a bad way, and I'm talking specifically about the border and these soft on crime policies, when people are getting murdered and cities are getting destroyed and neighborhoods are getting destroyed, and you're the president of the United States, these people put their trust in you, they nominated you, they voted for you, and you're destroying them. There's nothing worse to me than that. I mean, I think this is, and again, people say, "Oh, Michael, you're a Trump lover." I don't love Trump. I love my wife. I love my kids. I love my God. I love people. I don't love Trump. But you got to be honest. The guy gave us 4 good years as president. His policies were good. Yep. That's all I care about. You know, it could be Trump, could be anybody else. If you're doing the right thing for the country. But this guy and this administration, to throw people to the dogs the way they're doing is just... We wouldn't do that on the street.
I don't think Biden
We would not do it. I'm telling you, we wouldn't do that on the street.
Because they have no loyalty to America,
No.
and to their neighborhoods, and to their citizens. Trump
People
does.
are getting killed. You know, another thing. I mean, 13 military people died in Afghanistan because of his blunders, and he didn't even respect the families of these people.
Yep.
This is a bad guy.
Oh, yeah. Lies about his own
He's
son's
a bad
death.
guy.
Lies about everything.
I got a question. I mean, you mentioned loving God. Were the families religious?
Listen, on Ash Wednesday, you know, growing up Catholic, you see more guys with ashes on their head than you can believe. You know, everybody was Catholic. You know, look, are they good Catholics? If you're out there committing crimes, I don't know. But look, you know, here's another thing I say, and people, "Oh, Michael, everything that's illegal is not always immoral." You know what I mean? You could have a law.
Things are legal.
Yeah, you could have a law that you're not supposed to violate. It doesn't mean that it's immoral, because you can have an unjust government putting unjust laws on you. If you break that law, it doesn't mean you're committing a sin. It doesn't mean it's immoral. You know, now I'm not saying we didn't, you know, break the law and do immoral things, because we did. There's no question. I'm not trying to clean that up. But there was, look, I know a lot of good guys in that life, and it's the age-old question, why do good people do bad things? Well, sometimes they think they're doing the right thing when they're not. So everybody wasn't a bad guy and a demon. I brought up Roy DeMeo. That's a different story. That guy was insane. But there's a lot of guys that I thought were good guys, good people.
I guess that's what I was curious about. There's like two things I was thinking. I wonder if a loss of religion, as this country starts becoming more secular, and of the people who do claim to be Christian, they're not really practicing. And I wonder if that was a component of why there was at least some degree of honor relative to what we see now. The gangs that come in, they'll kill anybody, they don't care. The government, politicians, they'll insider trade, they'll strip the value, they'll pull the copper from the walls of the country while the city's burned down. I wonder if it's just there's no fear of God.
Tim, you nailed it 100%, because they're trying to get God out of our institutions, out of our kids' psyche and their head, out of our schools. I mean, it's, look, and I have 7 kids, I have 7 grandchildren, right? I have to say this. I saw something just today on the plane coming in that just got me sick. Senator John Kennedy, I love that guy. He's from Louisiana, good old boy, right? Straight shooter, just a great guy. But he was talking to a woman, I think she was from Planned Parenthood, and he was describing in detail with charts, everything, what an aborted baby, what happened to that baby at the age of 23 weeks old. And as he's describing it, I couldn't even watch it.
Yeah.
As they're tearing this baby apart, and they're saying to the woman, the baby's feeling pain, right? As they're pulling his legs apart and pulling his... How could you watch this? Mm-hmm. And these people get up there and say, abortion is okay because it's a woman's body to do what she pleases with it. Well, it's not the woman's body anymore. And I say, I have 7 kids, 7 grandchildren. My daughters and my daughter-in-laws, their body was never in trouble. Now, I would say this, if there was a case where, God forbid it's the mother or the baby, okay, you're going to pick the mother 99% of the time. We get that. We understand that. If there's a situation, rape, okay, we get it. There are certain instances where we get it. But to try to say, it's a woman's health issue, it's not a woman's health issue. And if Christians would vote their morality, there would never be a progressive president. Never.
Right.
But Christians don't vote. Yep. They don't get out there and vote. They talk. They don't.
We got out here in Charlestown, West Virginia. Charlestown and not Charleston. Mm-hmm. Big mistake people make. And, they had this procession of like 2,000 Christians, Catholics. It was a Latin mass, Catholics marching through the streets and in protest of a lot of what we're seeing. Yet the city council is all progressive, or it's dominated by progressives. And so I met a city councilman who is, I'd say I wouldn't call him far right or anything like that. He's a conservative guy, moderate. And I asked him, how is that possible? That you got a Latin mass in West Virginia, of all places, second most Trump-loving country, Trump-supporting state in the country. And he said they don't vote.
Exactly.
They go to church, and they think that church is all they need to do. They're not showing up. And for these progressives, the ballot box is their church.
Yep.
When they show up to vote, they're tithing, they're worshiping. And when the Catholics and the Christians go to church, they think that's it. And then they cast aside the rest.
And that's exactly my point. The sin of omission as serious as the sin of commission, because if Christians, Catholics would vote scripturally, we'd never have a progressive president or a progressive administration, because they couldn't.
Right. Well, that's the argument made by many liberals, leftists, secular individuals, is that Christians want to moralize. They're voting for religion and government. They shouldn't do that. Meanwhile, they're doing exactly that. Their ideologies have been described as non-theistic religions, or in a much more derogatory way, cults. That's what I like to say.
They're a death cult.
Yeah, and they go and vote based on these ideological beliefs.
Exactly.
And then criticize anybody who does otherwise. There was this post that someone made from Daniel Radcliffe had a comment. Mm-hmm. Where he said, he's Harry Potter. He said that he was an atheist and he has no problem with religions, just people shouldn't be voting based on religion. And he's a militant atheist who thinks that should be stopped. And he's basically saying, my worldview is absolute and no one else should be able to influence government based on their worldview. That's all he's really saying. Mm-hmm. I think these people genuinely don't understand religion and morality. They genuinely think they are morally superior for not having a religious view because they're smarter and better than everybody.
Mm-hmm. They want to divorce everyone from God, and they want to destroy the family, and they want the government to be the family. And that's what they are doing all the time.
You're exactly right. What you both said is exactly right. And look at the havoc that's being caused.
Yeah, total
And
chaos.
yeah, Christians are at fault for that. Catholics at fault for that because they don't go out and vote the way they're supposed
But
to.
I thought Joe Biden's a Catholic.
Joe Biden.
What?
That guy is. You know what? I never wanted to say this because this country is so divided right now. It's horrible. It really is terrible. But I think people with knowledge now, if they can vote for Harris in this administration, I think I'm going to be really upset with them. And, I think it was Megyn Kelly that said, all right, you people go out and vote, but if you put this person in office, you're causing me to suffer. Mm-hmm. And I don't ever want to resent somebody because of their political views, but I think I'm going to be angry at this point.
Yeah, I understand the anger now because they actually are going after children.
Yeah.
They're mutilating innocents. They don't care about the country. They're loyal to foreign people in other countries like Biden and China. It's nuts.
Massachusetts now, they're trying to pass the bill. It's in front of their legislature where a mother on the birth certificate is no longer called mother.
Yeah.
She's the birth person.
Yeah.
And the father is the other person.
Right.
Well, there was I saw a story the other day that said a throuple of 3 gay men had a baby through surrogacy, and they put all their names on the birth certificate.
Holy.
I haven't fact-checked this, so...
But, these days, things that are caricatures are so easily believable. It's insane.
I have to wonder...
Insane.
I have to wonder what the families in, like, the 80s would be thinking if you showed them a newspaper from today.
Oh, God.
Well, that's a time travel mobster movie where they had to come from the 70s to 2024.
I'm telling you, when
do
you
it.
got to hold up...
We should make that short film. That'd be
When
funny.
you got to hold up the mob as the moral standard in this
That's-
country, and actually, we can do that.
But that's basically the premise here that I was bringing up. Somebody shared that clip from the Bronx Tale and went viral several times over the past year because people keep saying that scene where they beat the crap out of the bikers is better than what we have now. Not that we want any violence, but right now it's absolutely insane. Where you've got, as I mentioned, the homelessness, the poverty, the drug abuse, camps all over these cities, and no accountability. And now we're looking at in Seattle, after the police got defunded, they're saying they will not respond to emergency alarms anymore. They don't have the resources. So if an alarm goes off at a building, they just say, well, good luck.
I wonder if something like this reemerges then. If a family type, mafia type thing can reemerge. I don't see it happening from the legal aliens coming by because I think they're probably loyal to stuff going on wherever they came from and to their day-to-day survival here.
Well, this I don't know, maybe Michael would know better with the Tren de Aragua coming in and with the Summer of Love riots we saw.
Yeah.
There was one video where some Antifa far left guys were trying to riot in a small town, and a bunch of the men got up and just stood firm and started pushing them out as they were screaming, and they were like, "Get out!" Is it possible that with Tren de Aragua, you're going to get a bunch of local guys coming together and just being like, maybe they're union working guys being like, we got to come together. We can't let Tren de Aragua come in, and that turns into a family.
Well, I read that some of the gangs in Chicago were now pulling together to say, we got to go after these guys, so we're not going to let this happen. Look, I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, it seems like it's natural. That's a natural progression of what's going on.
This is the Tren de Aragua Chicago story is, I think it's one of the more interesting and very worrying stories. I remember a long time ago, I was at a police station when I was a teenager, and they have maps of gang territory. The cops know who they're going, and they have to know the rules about what these gangs do. Some gangs might shoot on sight. I mean, no respect. They don't care. They give a 13-year-old kid a gun, and they say, don't let cops come in. And they know that kid, they tell him, like, don't worry, you'll get out when you're 18.
Yeah.
So now what we're hearing is rumors. I don't know to what extent it's actually starting to develop, but one story of one of the local gangs, they were outside of some building, and they said the Venezuelans have come in here and they're selling drugs on our turf. You can't do that. The other gangs know better. If, I'm not going to start naming which gangs or anything because I know all of them, but, gang 1 says, don't worry, gang number 2, they know not to cross this street because this is where we do business. And we have an agreement because we don't want to go to war. So we don't go over there. Sometimes you get a young guy is going to be like, I'm going to take this turf, and they can't do anything about it. But, that I feel like that's more rare, at least when I was growing up. But the Venezuelans don't care about any of that. They don't care about treaties. They don't care about agreements.
No.
And so now Gang 1 goes to Gang 2 and says, if we don't stop these Venezuelan cartels and drug dealers coming into our turf, they're coming for yours next. So work with us. If you see them, let's not let them. The scary thing is what that turns into.
Yeah.
You see this video out of Aurora where they come and knock on the door and they're banging on it, and then they start drilling through the door or whatever, and they go inside. If that were Chicago, they'd knock on that door, they'd pull out a drill, whatever, and then bullets would come flying right through that door.
Yeah.
And that's it.
You know what? It's going to come to that. I think it really
hope
is.
not.
If they don't get hold of this, it's going to come to that.
It's like an evolved
really is.
version of what you're saying with working with the Russian guy, right? It's for money's sake, right?
Yeah.
At some point, there's going to be a defensive version of that. Did you have to deal with like the Irish mafia at all, and in any way, or compete
we
against
dealt
them?
with the Westies.
I was just going to say the Westies.
And
Yeah,
I knew
Hell's
Jimmy
Kitchen.
Coonan really well.
Oh yeah.
And they were good bunch of guys. You know, we
Yeah.
got along with them, and that was probably the only group that we dealt with at the time. That was it. But we didn't go to war with them.
Right.
We dealt with them.
You were mentioning that Fat Tony, when he called for that meeting, that was a different crime family.
Yeah.
Or I should say
Genevieve's.
different family.
Yeah.
But you guys worked with each other and
Yeah.
that's
We didn't go to war. You know, people think we went to war with each other. That ended in the 30s and the 40s.
Right.
Whenever there was a war in a family, and unfortunately, the Colombos, we were a warring family. We had 3 wars in my lifetime. But there's a civil war, and it's usually over power, who's going to be the boss or whatever. But it's an internal war.
Mm-hmm.
It's never a war among the families. We don't go to war. We settle things.
When you say there's a war within the family, is that people within making their own
It's always a power
group and then being like, we're going to take this guy out?
Well, it's who's going to be the boss.
Right.
It's always over the top spot.
Right.
Did you, was there ever a circumstance where one of your guys on his own, for whatever, goes into another family's territory or businesses and causes problems?
Happened all the time.
But I meant, but like, what's the remedy then? Does Fat Tony say, hey, look, your guy came in here. What are we going to do about this? Like, how is that handled?
Sit down and discuss it, and hopefully you can resolve it without anybody getting hurt, depending upon what the situation was. But I had to sit down almost every other day, over some of my guys doing something or somebody wanting a piece of business.
every day.
I mean, yeah, when you're a captain, you're constantly doing that kind of business, and I had a couple of
Mitigating.
crazy guys around me.
Wow.
I was talking to Michael Malice about private security. He's an anarchist, so he views police as a private institution better than a governmental one. I don't completely agree. And I said, how would it work? I mean, look, I live in this town. I pay my private police department. They keep me safe. And if someone comes to rob me, they'll come and they'll arrest them. Let's say there's 2 cities. They each have their own private police force. One guy comes to my house and robs me, gets chased by my private cops to this other city where he runs in his house and then calls his cops and says, these other cops are lying. They're coming to get me. Come defend me. And he said it'd be like the Mafia. That's how things would be run. And it was better then. And, I don't completely agree, but that did entertain the idea that crimes could be resolved better. But I'm curious, if something like that were to happen, how do the families resolve that issue?
Well, again, they would sit down, they'd make a decision. If the guy at fault was really at fault and he had to be eliminated, it would happen.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a joint decision at that point.
But I'd imagine there are a lot of circumstances where, if one of your guys was accused and it's looking like, I think he might be innocent. However, they're demanding something that if we don't give them, it could make things worse.
It could be. I mean, you defend your guy as best you could. But look, there's politics played at times too, That's why when I sat down with you, I said, please, no politics. Because I know, they do favors for one another and you get the short end of the stick. It's like anything else. Same thing in government, any organization. But no, we tried to resolve things amicably, as best we could. Look, it's to nobody's advantage to be killing each other in the streets. We all knew that. Mm-hmm. People think, oh, we went to war, we want to fight. No, I mean, it was a last resort. Always a last resort.
Speaking of killing in the streets, what do you think about the mob ties and the JFK assassination?
My whole life, all I ever heard, and I have no reason to disbelieve it because it was from the right people, without a doubt, that it was a mob hit.
Really?
No question. And look, Jack Ruby, come out of Chicago. He was around the Capone guys back then. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, he goes into a police station out of nowhere and he kills Lee Harvey Oswald. Come on.
little suspect.
It was a setup. The CIA knew about it. I mean, what's his name? Accardo said it. You know, we killed the wrong Kennedy. He had it on tape. I mean, look, Joe Kennedy made a deal. We were supposed to have access to the White House if we delivered Illinois. We delivered it. When I say we, you know,
Right,
the family there. They delivered Illinois, and what happened? Bobby Kennedy went just the opposite. You know, as U.S. attorney, he started prosecuting.
He went after families.
Yeah, he went after it.
After Hoover did nothing for so long.
Well, remember, J. Edgar Hoover would never even admit that the Mafia existed.
Well, they had a little stuff on.
Why did that happen? J. Edgar Hoover used to go to the Stork Club, which Frank Costello had a piece of.
Right.
And what's his name there? I forget his name. Whatever, the owner. He had that place wired and bugged.
Yeah.
And he was trying to catch celebrities in acts so he can have something on them. But he happened to catch Hoover in a bathroom with his boyfriend.
That's right.
And they had it on him. True story. And Hoover would never mention that the Mafia. The only time Hoover had to mention it was after Appalachia.
Right.
And he had to. Because
That's like
it
30
was
years later, right?
Yeah, it was later. And he had to say, okay, it does exist. He wouldn't prosecute. He wouldn't do anything. But Bobby Kennedy took the opposite. He said, no, we're going after these guys.
The mob, do you think the mob then did Bobby too?
No.
Really?
No.
And when you say the mob did JFK, does that mean the CIA worked with the mob?
Yes.
Wow.
Was that, you know, it wasn't the first time.
Yeah.
I mean, they came to us to try to kill Castro.
How
100%.
how public was, you know, all of this stuff went, you know, from the 50s to the 80s? Was it very common in the press? Everybody knew the mob was out there. They're doing stuff. They're in the news every day. You mentioned walking to the prison. You're on the TV.
There wasn't, I'll be honest with you, you know, New York Times, Daily News, New York Post, during my era in that life, there wasn't a day or two that went by without a mob story about somebody, usually 2 or 3 of them. Now, I read the New York Post every morning. Maybe every 6 months you might read something.
Right.
And then you read, what do you read? These guys got busted for the same old thing, gambling and it's the same nonsense, silly things that they, you know.
Yeah.
You know,
I just don't hear about it anymore.
No.
But I wonder if that's it. You know, with the obsession over Donald Trump starting in 2015, CNN turned into the Trump News Network. Mm-hmm. I remember I used to watch CNN every day. Mm-hmm. This is 6, 7 years ago. I had a projector screen on my wall playing CNN 10 feet wide, and I would just leave it running, so for breaking news. And then one day I'm watching it, and I see online that there's riots going on in Iran, and I'm like, what's happening in Iran? And I look at the screen, and they're having a roundtable talking about Trump. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't know. I got to change channel. Fox News, Iranian protests. And I'm just like, they became obsessed with talking about Trump. I'm wondering if now the media stops writing about the families and their dealings and what's going on because they're not getting the traffic and the attention they used to get. Maybe the story was just the American public was thirsty for news about what the families were doing. They made movies about it, endless movies.
No. To a degree, but I'll tell you what, back in my day, we had, among all 5 families, we had about 750 made guys that actually took the oath. We had a lot of associates, but guys that actually took the oath. Back then, the FBI had 12 to 1,400 agents assigned to the 5 families. There was 2 agents to every 1 guy, made guy.
Oh, man.
Now, there's less than 100 agents
That's right.
for all 5 families.
What I'm saying is either it's a prime time for resurgence because the public doesn't care and the feds don't care, or they've already they have operation going, but they're keeping it under the radar.
They are keeping it under the radar. They're not going away. That much I can tell you. But they're just the feds are just not on them anymore. They feel that they did the job to a great degree.
They got to go after the J6ers.
Yeah, but they're not. But again, let me tell you, you don't want to get me started on that.
Yeah, we do.
They go after the J6ers much harder than the mob guys.
You know what? You know what gets me upset? Who the heck are these people that they made such a big deal out of it? First of all, I think that whole thing was a setup. I mean,
Totally.
come on. Trump asked Pelosi, have the National Guard there. She refused.
Yep.
He asked the mayor, get more police. They refused. They're walking people into there.
For sure.
And they made such a big deal out of it. And I'm saying, well, who the heck are you people? Right. Our cities were burning down.
Yeah, well, they funded those.
Yeah, after Floyd. Burning down, businesses closed, riots, people getting killed in the streets. Oh, it was a summer of what? What'd they call it?
Love.
Yeah, summer of love.
Mostly peaceful.
Yeah, so now we got to worry about you. Not one of you got hurt. You're hiding under the desk. You got a police force around you. Nothing happened. Mm-hmm. But, it was an assault on democracy when Normal people are getting killed. Businesses getting closed. Houses are getting burned down. But you're special. Come on, you know.
It's funny is it just sounds like a gang.
Yeah.
When it's funny you tell the story about your gas stations. The problem was that you were taking money from them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They don't care if the people are robbing each other, but don't go after their paychecks.
Exactly.
That's when they get mad.
Exactly.
That's why they didn't care about the Summer of Love. Rioters threw firebombs at the White House, torched a guard post, set fire to St. John's Church. The president was forced into an emergency bunker, but they don't like Trump, so that was fine.
They didn't care.
They don't care about it. They don't talk about it. There's no commission about it.
They didn't want it to end.
Yeah, right.
No.
They were
Right.
Kamala was she put out that link to donate to help get these people out of jail.
Yep. Maxine Waters to get in their faces. You know, they loved it.
Did you ever think in your wildest imagination that we would see something like that?
No.
No.
And Jack Posobiec has a really great post. I want to pull this one up. It's heavy political, but I think this one matters.
What surprised me is like knowing history, you know what happens, and it's bound to repeat itself. But it was just shock of people I knew overnight being brainwashed into being bloodthirsty for your neighbor or for your loved one, and banishing your family if they had wrong thing, or seeing people donate money to arsonists or marching down to the city and doing violence themselves.
This is a great post from Jack Posobiec. He says, I really have to tell the Zoomers, politics is not usually like this. Presidential elections are not usually like this. Usually they're kind of boring. Multiple assassination attempts, sitting presidents dropping out nuclear war threats, one party trying to lock up the other candidate. There's never been anything like this. Yeah.
100%. I mean, it's like a fictionalized novel that you'd read 20 years ago that this could happen and you'd laugh it off. It would never happen.
How old are you?
73.
73.
Yeah.
Wow, I did not expect you to be 73. I thought you were younger than that. But you've been around for a lot of presidential elections, and you agree with Jack? It's usually pretty boring.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, it was great because one day, okay, you went out and vote. By the next morning, you know who the president is, or by later that night.
Do you think the elections were rigged before, though, at some point?
Absolutely do.
Presidential ones?
Before what?
Before the 2021.
I have no evidence to say that happened. I didn't even think of it.
Really?
Yeah.
Because knowing you could fix games, knowing World Series have been fixed, it's like it seems nothing is safe.
Yeah, I have no evidence of that. Never heard anything on the street about that until the last election in 2020. But do I believe that election was rigged? 100%.
There's a lot of weird stuff going
100%. Yeah, I mean, come on. Look, COVID was the best thing that ever happened to progressives.
Mm-hmm.
But again, too, I wish people would just wake up. These people have lied to. I mean, they caused people to die during COVID.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I think
these are murderers.
Genocidal.
These are murderers.
Mm-hmm.
They are murderers.
What Cuomo did with the nursing homes.
Yeah,
I'll never forget it.
And now he's entertaining a run for New York City mayor with what's going on with Eric Adams.
I know.
And people are actually suggesting he'll probably
They
win.
deserve him. He's a genocidal maniac, in my opinion.
But it wasn't just him; it was other Democrat.
I think
governors.
Whitmer did it as well.
Yeah, I think it was also Wolf in where was he? Was he PA?
PA. Yeah, there's 3 or 4 governors that did the same thing.
New Jersey, I think Newsom may have did the same thing.
Yeah, but look, you get guys like Fauci, who misled us, who lied to us, who had something to do with the whole China at the Wuhan lab.
Right.
These guys walk away scot-free, and they got blood on their hands. I mean, they caused innocent people to die. Hundreds of thousands, maybe more than that, and scot-free.
No accountability.
Isn't it kind of funny when you're getting your morals from a former mafia guy over your government officials?
Absolutely. Listen, if it's shocking
sense to
me, who's seen a lot, I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
But for me, again, it's all a violation of trust to such a degree that you cause people to die, and you're a public official. And I don't know why. I just cannot. I can't.
You wanted your neighborhoods to be nice.
Yes.
You wanted to go to your restaurant, bring your family out, not worry about it. I mean, there's parts of the New York City I just won't go to anymore because they're lost.
I know.
They're
and listen,
insane.
Chicago. I love that city.
Yeah.
Chicago's a great town. I always looked at it as a miniature New York, easier to get around with, great food, good people, great. And look at it now.
Yeah, man. And to see the Mag Mile, Water Tower, Gold Coast areas, what they're turning into, it's crazy. The downtown storefronts just closed. And I was there a couple of years ago and I couldn't believe how many businesses had shut down. It's not just about the crime, it's the economy. I think, it's one thing when you look at the local level, defund the police, the political climate around policing, the cops can't do anything. Not to mention, Chicago cops are corrupt. Not all of them, but Chicago's got corrupt cops. And I think now what we're looking at is, I guess, the inverse of when things break down the other direction, and now it's just gang crime and theft and robberies. Now there's no town at all. What's going to happen is, I go back home and I'm shocked to see what the city's turned into. But the people who never left, it's just the same, right? So the younger people are like, what do you mean? It's always been like this.
Right.
Yeah.
Older people are like, no, there used to be a hot dog stand over there. There used to be a barber shop over there, an ice cream shop right there.
I think a lot of that is what breeds nihilism in the younger people who are doing this like petty, violent crime, day-to-day stuff because they have no meaning in their lives. Going back to having no God and stuff like that.
People used to say, well, you guys corrupted the cops. Yeah, okay. So we had a card game, and they would come, and we'd pay them off and look the other way while guys are sitting down playing cards.
Right.
They're not shooting each other. They're not robbing people in the street. They're not selling drugs. They're playing cards. Right. Okay, sorry the government isn't getting their cut out of it. Okay, so the cops, they would look the other way. We'd pay them. They'd go away. We're corrupting the cops. That's corrupting the cops.
Right.
Come on. What else did we do with them? Really, that was it. They weren't hiding bodies for us or anything like that.
In the 70s and 80s, the city also wasn't the best of places, too. There were a lot of crazy, it was Son of Sam was happening.
Absolutely.
The city went bankrupt at one point in the 70s.
Yeah.
I think the president at that point said, no, I'm not bailing you out.
Not bailing out, yeah.
So, you were dealing with a lot of crazy stuff happening around you. So did you find yourselves having to defend yourself against some of the dystopian things happening in the 70s and 80s, or were you just kind of staying out of it?
Yeah, it didn't trouble us.
Really?
We're fine. Yeah. No, we didn't have any of those issues.
Right.
We're doing our own thing and just don't bother us, and
right.
Don't mess with our neighborhoods or anything like that, or stay away from our stuff, and we're all right.
Right.
But listen, if they would have engaged, look, you understand this too. This is kind of ironic, but most of my guys, they all fought in the war.
Right.
Either the Korean War, World War II. A lot of guys, they were patriotic. Yep. Hey, we'll steal money from the government. Don't you mess with my country, though.
Right.
A lot of the guys had that view.
For sure.
Believe it or not, but.
Oh man, I'm looking back at my old neighborhood and there's a vegan sandwich shop where the pizza used to be. We're lost.
That's it.
Tim's like,
Oh,
refund the
pizza
mafia.
Vegan food now. Oh geez.
God.
Refund the mafia.
Let me ask you this, okay? Do you think that America can survive 4 years of Harris and whoever's really pulling the
Barely
strings?
survived 4 years of her now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you think another 4 years that we can survive this?
Well, I'll say this. I think this country will exist. It's a question of, will we like what it's become? There's always going to be people here, even if the apocalypse were to happen and the sun were to, solar flare out all the technology or whatever. The American people will figure it out, but a lot of people are going to be in really, really bad spots. I think we got a lot of people in this country who don't know how to survive, don't know what it means to work hard. There was a report out the other day, a survey found that Gen Z college graduate employees are getting fired at an extremely high rate, extremely quickly. And companies are reporting that when they bring in these, 23, 24-year-olds, they make excuses. They don't dress properly. They talk weird. They're insulting, condescending, lazy. They call them sick all the time. They're quiet quitting. And I fear for this next generation of where we're already at, because this is a problem of 20 years ago, that these things have been bubbling up. And I wonder if, and this is kind of worrying, the real issue is that 20 years ago when the problems emerged, most people didn't realize that the roots of this nation, the next generation, were being poisoned. And now, 20 years later, this generation set to take over has got some serious problems. There are good and honest, intelligent Gen Z people. I'm never saying that every generation is bad or whatever, but there are a lot of, there's a greater degree as you get younger and younger of people who don't understand work ethic, sacrifice. And I think that even if we get Trump in, he starts to turn things around, we are going to be in some turbulence for a little bit. But to be fair, I think the preferable alternative would be Trump, obviously. I don't know that, should Harris actually win, I think that the tailspin that we're in turns into a crashing at sea, and the survivors got to figure out how to stay afloat. I think Donald Trump pulls us out of the nosedive. We get real close, things get shaky and things get rough, but we make it through. Mm-hmm. Here's hoping, I guess.
Yeah, I hope people find God more. You know, I think how bad it's been. I see a lot of people going to church now who I didn't expect going to church. I'm one of them. You know, I didn't.
Well,
ever
I
see
can
myself
tell you,
doing that.
I believe there is a Jesus revolution.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I'm seeing it among college-age kids.
Yep.
That's what we need. I
Yep.
mean, there's no question about it. And the more they try to push God out of our institutions and out of our daily life and alienate our children from God, the worse this country is going to get, you know. And listen, I'm praying. I really am. But I don't think we survive. You know, one thing, being on the Rumble platform, it's a different platform than YouTube in that people are very angry. I mean, I get messages like this. Right. And they just go on and on and on. They're very angry with what's going on now. I think if Trump loses, this anger is going to spill over because there's a lot of people that just can't take what's going on here anymore. And I'm only hoping that they're really paying attention. And again, you know, is it personal with Harris? I mean, just go away. Just go away. Go back to, California. I live there.
Yeah. You want her back?
Huh?
You want her back there?
I'd rather have her in California. I can deal with that rather than make the United States California.
Yeah, for
you know
sure.
what I mean?
For sure.
And destroy it even further.
Sure.
You know, the Pelosi's, just go away. You did your damage.
You got Newsom,
You
too.
made your
My
money.
goodness.
Go away. Newsom, go away. You know, people just go away. Don't wish them any harm.
Right.
Just go away and let us get back to some normalcy here, you know? But I'm telling you, I don't know how we're going to survive, you know, the influx at the border. And remember, something we're not talking about. We're $36 trillion in debt.
Yeah.
How do you get out from under $36 trillion? The answer is you don't.
Right.
Well,
something has got to give.
War.
you know, this is why they're opening the border. They've got TPS, temporary protected status, and they're trying to expedite work permits. Their answer to this is just flood the country with as many workers as possible. We don't even care where they're from or what they do. Give them work permits, and then we'll tax them.
Yeah.
That's how they're trying to make up for the debts. It's not going to work.
Not going to work.
You can't do it.
It's ridiculous.
It is a Band-Aid and a bullet wound.
And it's not only that, they'll outspend any revenue that comes in. That's just their way. It doesn't matter.
Man. Well, what's your prediction then? Are you optimistic?
You know, gosh, if I was a betting man, I wouldn't bet. But I want to have some confidence in the American people and say they're really seeing through all of this, and that, you know, it's not popular to be a Trump supporter. But hopefully when they go in the booth, if it's legit, and I always say if it's legit, because these people are so underhanded, so sneaky, so shaky, you know, and they can get these voting machines, and who knows what they can do with them. You know, so who knows? But I think if this election is legit, that Trump will win.
I agree.
I agree as well.
He did something yesterday, you know, in preparation for Harris going to the border for the second time, right, in 4 years. And she was going to make her whole play that it was Donald Trump's fault and all that lie that she's going to. He gave an excellent speech in New York yesterday. He just stayed on the issues.
Nice.
And he kept saying, Kamala, you're going to do it. Why didn't you do it for the past 3.5 years? He kept pounding that home. And if enough people are listening to this and they have any kind of sense, they're going to say, well, yeah, why didn't she?
You think he can win New York?
No. I don't think
It's impossible.
I don't think he can win New York, but I love what I'm seeing. The crowds that he's bringing in.
People forget New York has a lot of red areas.
I know.
The city does just ruin it for everybody.
The city
lately.
ruins it.
But they've had Republican mayors. I mean,
I
how
know.
about Giuliani?
I know.
Well, Cuomo will be a Republican.
He wins New York. He wins New York. He wins the election. There's no question.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Well, he's surprisingly close in Jersey against Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Harris improved a little bit, but this is why they had to, you know, I mean, it's pretty wild to think. Let's just, once again, a shout out to Jack Posobiec. 2 assassination attempts, technically 3 with the Iranian plot.
Yep.
5 teams, according to the DNI. Even Donald Trump has now acknowledged this, targeting him. The sitting president has dropped out abruptly only 3 months before the election was to take place. This is wild time. And so I just remind everybody, may you live in interesting times is meant to be a curse.
Absolutely.
It was just last summer that the Mexican government had alien corpses in their Congress. So
It was cake the whole time.
it was cake. That's true.
Yeah, it was cake. This has been absolutely fun. It's been a blast, Michael. Is there anything you want to shout out or final thoughts as we wrap up?
No, you know, one thing I do want to talk about, you know, I get so many requests, I would say. You know, people are really struggling. And I get requests for mentorship and you know, advice all the time, and a lot of personal things that people are going through right now. So recently I just started a platform, and we got an influx of membership. We only launched it a week ago. And in that platform, it's michaelfranzese.com. It's in my website. We are offering a family and a community for people where like-minded people can get together, get some help, have some fellowship, and you'd be surprised how people need this today. Mm-hmm. They're looking for it. They don't have it. They don't have communities like they had before. Families. They have nobody. So, you know, I just want to mention that's something that we started, and that I'm totally committed to try to get this country unified again and try to get people thinking the right way. I'm doing a Bible study twice a month.
Awesome.
You know, it's amazing, Tim. I just announced this. I said, look, you know, God put it in my heart. First Wednesday and last Wednesday of every month, I'm going to do a Bible study. I said, free, just jump on. It's michaelfranzese.com/Bible study. And we got a flow of people. It was unbelievable. Cool. And I said, listen, you don't have to be a Christian. You know, I'm not a Bible thumper. I don't hit you over the head with the Bible. I'm not trying to turn you into a Christian, but there's a lot of scriptural foundation that can help you with the issues that you're going through today. Yep. And people responded immediately. I'm getting so many requests. We couldn't believe how many people jumped on. So, you know, we're out there to try to do that. I believe this. To those who have been given much, much is expected in return. And for me to be sitting here and to be alive and to be free is a big deal. And I believe God had a different plan and a purpose for my life. So you want to give back. Mm. And, you know, it's really been a great, you know, thing in my life to be able to do that. And we're going to continue it. And hopefully we get a bunch of people that will benefit from it.
Where can people find you?
Well, I'm all over. I mean, most people know me. But this site is michaelfranzese.com. And just go on my website and you can jump in and join the family. And be a lot of benefits to this. And I'm YouTube, Rumble, I'm all over the place. So.
Right on. Thanks for hanging out.
Yeah. And it was a real pleasure. It was awesome.
Yeah, you guys were great.
Thank you.
Really. I love you, down to earth, real. That's what we need today.
Yeah, great. That was a great talk. I'm Shane Cashman. You can find me online also everywhere. And the show is Inverted World Live every Sunday at 6 o'clock.
Right on. We are back tonight at 8 p.m. for youtube.com/TimCastIRL. And make sure you check out the new single. We just put it out with Phil Labonte on guest vocals, All That Remains, getcominghome.com. It's also on YouTube if you search YouTube Music, Timcast Music. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all tonight.